Okay, now. All right. Hey, welcome everybody to Game Time with Doc, Lurch, and Greg. Once again, we're here to cover anything and everything going on in the nerdosphere out there for you people, just to kind of remind you we're still here, we're still thinking about you, and can't wait to when we can start doing live events again. Um, we are already starting to plan on dates and stuff for next year for game. We're not going to do a game this year, and we're probably not going to do a
Picnic.
picnic this year. Thank you. My brain
Yeah,
just didn't want
yeah,
to finish that thought. It was against the
yeah.
thought so much it didn't want to finish it.
It was rejecting it, but yeah,
It was
we
rejected
we
it.
were we were so much wanting to do a picnic this late summer, early fall kind of window, but with the Delta variant spiking like it has been, we had to conclude that it just wasn't a worthwhile risk at the moment, and so.
Well, plus I
Um,
think an
but
additional concern was the pavilion was already booked out. I think too. So it didn't really have openings that we could jump onto that were reasonable for picnic weather. So anyway, so that happens. Let's do a real quick sound check before we go too much further. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Much further. Check 1 2, check 1
Check
2.
one two. Check
Further.
1 2.
Check 1 2, check 1
Check
2.
one
use
two.
the
Check one
force.
two.
Check 1 2, check 1
Check
2.
one
Use
two.
the
Check one
force.
two.
Check 1 2, check 1
Check
2.
one
Use
two.
the
Check one
force.
two.
All right, we got a heck of a melody going on there. Not sure what I would call that melody, but it was a melody. Yeah. Uh, that's the best and the worst I can say about it right now.
All right,
And looks
I'll
like
take
it.
it.
I got a
I've
new
never been
follow.
accused of having melody.
Um, a quick update from last week. You know, I mentioned that one ramen place that had been getting some hate shaming. We went to it the next day, and it already looked like they were getting a bunch more love from the community because they were having the busiest week they'd had. So thank you for those who did go out and maybe you watched this later on or you heard it secondhand from us. But it's really nice. It's not right to shame people for anything involving their choices or lifestyle because it's not even a choice. Sometimes it's just being who you are. And so I do want to tell people that we are appreciative of that. And the food turned out to be really fantastic because I got my first try at it and it was really good.
Cool, cool,
So
cool. I I tried a new place this week too. I tried out Pita Pit, and
oh, love
it
Pita
was
Pit.
good. I liked
Love
it.
Pita Pit.
Yeah, I'd never been there before,
Oh
but
yeah, they have good falafel and they do a Hawaiian one that Allison likes especially. I like the flavor of it, but there's something about chicken and barbecue sauce that sometimes will set off my gag reflex. I'm not sure why.
well, I guess we should we get started on our first story today.
Well, first off, for those who may have tuned in and don't know who we are, we're part of Eclectic Endeavors, basically under the umbrella of the Springfield Regional Art Council. I'm Doc, or Gamer Seuss, or Clyde Star, although never call me that. And I am the director of cross promotions for Eclectic Endeavors. Uh, right beneath me, we've got Greg Pullman, our director of tabletop gaming. He also
Hello.
kind of maintains the Facebook page and some of the website stuff. So that's Greg. And then below him, we've got Philip Vandergen, or Lurch, who is director of electronic gaming and kind of, I would say, kind of been changed to a little bit like assistant chairman now for the way things are
Yeah,
going.
yeah.
Uh,
With the
with
way things had adjusted recently, I think co-chairman is
coach
probably the
co-chairman, yeah,
appropriate description.
we were listing him as the chairman for this year
Yeah.
because Chris Stewart was going to be just stepping down in an advisory role only. But since all the COVID stuff and everything happened, he's actually going to step back in and kind of co-chair it with Philip to help him through his first real year together because he was supposed to do that last year, and then we didn't end up having the convention at all. So
Yeah.
so Chris is still going to be kind of involved a little bit more. If you can see right there on our splash screen, it does say stay tuned for details and announcement uh, coming in this month for Game Expo 2022 because we are working on that. Anyway,
Yep. Yep.
we handle everything and anything involved in the nerdosphere, and we're going to jump right in because we got a lot to talk about this week. It's been a real busy week in overall nerddom, and we
Mm-hmm.
love weeks like that, and we also kind of dread them sometimes because means there's a lot to talk about. And to fit into just a 2 hour show, sometimes it's hard. And we often go over, but we try not to go over too much because we know people do have other things they want to do. People have lives? Yeah, I know. People have lives. It's terrible. No, anyway.
What
So
is live?
I don't know, man. Anyway, we're going to jump into our first topic, which is terraforming Mars. Okay, that's one of Greg's topics, so he can go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, I had the pleasure earlier this week, just yesterday actually, of playing with the 417 gamers at Prehistoric Brewing. Very nice place, by the way. And got to play the newest edition of a a modern classic called Terraforming Mars. If you've played it, you know it's great. If you
I
haven't,
love that game.
it is hand management, resource management, and you are playing the role of a corporation trying to get the biggest glory for terraforming the planet Mars. And over the course of rounds, you play project cards from your hand, and you're trying to create oceans, create forests to raise oxygen levels on the planet, and raise the temperature of the planet to make it sustainable for human life. It's a great game. It has a lot of bits, which doesn't bother me, and it takes a while, which doesn't bother me, but can be intimidating to players who aren't already in the deep end.
Yeah,
There was a Kickstarter that I didn't even know about. Go ahead, Doc.
I was going to say those are exactly the games I look for. I love lots of moving parts and details, and that's
So
why
so do
I
I,
love that
and
game.
yeah, and Stronghold Games managed to do the impossible. They created a game that still feels like terraforming Mars, but moves faster and smoother. The Kickstarter, which I didn't even know was a thing, generated $1.2 million, and the friend of mine from 417 Gamers who brought the game, his name was Ben, he had just gotten his copy in 2 weeks prior and had gotten some inserts for the game, which I'll explain later. The game borrows some inspiration from Race to the Galaxy, which I have not played, but people
I have
have
that.
sung its praises. Yeah. It has a round system where people pick a card, a specific phase of play to go through, and reveal their cards, and then those are the phases of play that happen during that round. And then, like, everybody does, if there's 5 phases and the players pick 1, 3, and 5, then everybody does phase 1 first, then everybody does phase 3 first, and so on, and then starts the whole round over again, selecting new phases to play.
Yeah, but 2 and 4 would be
It's
skipped.
yeah, and it's a little hard to explain without visual aids, but you can follow the images. You can go on to Board Game Geek and look up the pages and look at some of these images. The individual player boards are very similar to the original. Resource management, especially for steel and titanium, which give you discounts on certain cards, have been radically simplified. And yet the core of the game still played very similar. The project cards still have tags, those like plant tags, microbes, science,
Mm-hmm.
things that don't mean anything in and of themselves, but you'll play cards that are like, you can't play this card unless you've played at least 3 science tags so far. or
They meet requirements, and then later
this
on,
card,
they're
yeah,
for scoring.
or this card gives you one extra heat production for every Earth tag you have, things like that.
Right.
So you can build that engine, and they've aligned the tags along the left side of the card, which you can see in some of the images, which makes it very easy to fan the cards and conserve space on your board, unlike the original version where if you're at a how wide's my dining table is like 6 feet circle in diameter. You can play that game comfortably with 4 people most of the time. 5's a stretch. But this one, we had 2 bar tables end to end, and we could have played on one of them if we'd had to. The rest
Okay.
was just mainly for storage space. The components are still high quality, though the one downside, and the original suffers from this as well, the Kickstarter version of the game had double-layered boards, double-layered player boards. So there's the bottom layer, and then there's the top layer that had cutouts so that you could set the is that tracks how much money you gain during each production phase would sit in that little divot and wouldn't move around if somebody bumped the table. The retail version of that doesn't have that depth. It's just a sheet of cardboard. So do not bump the table under any circumstances, or do what my friend did and splurge for a cutout that somebody 3D printed using clear plastic to mimic that effect.
This looks like the board looks a little bit better because it's got the little grooves in it, so it can kind of keep stuff together. A lot of the people I played with Terraforming Mars had to order specialty boards for their pieces and stuff because it wasn't
Yeah,
always so
it's
easy.
yeah, and there's enough project cards in the game. We did a 3-player game. We played for almost 2 hours, which, for reference, the core game typically takes about 3 hours.
Yes.
For if you're teaching a new player, or if you're really getting into the weeds with you building your engine, which I tend to do. So it's much faster.
And it does it come with these
It
trays, or do
says
you have to order these separately?
which trays?
The trays that have got the cubes in it. Because we used to have.
I don't. I think those might have come with the Kickstarter edition because I don't recall those. Ben's copy, he had them in little bitty, like 3-ounce Tupperware looking bins.
Mm.
So I think those might have been a Kickstarter exclusive.
Okay, because I know a lot of people with games like that and Terra Mystica and stuff, they have to go out and buy specialty trays to organize all the stuff because like that's the one downside to these games with a lot of moving parts is they don't tend to
Yeah.
make it real easy to store the
According
stuff.
according to the Kickstarter page, it does come with the cube trays, both of them. I guess to conserve space or something, Ben just decided to use a different organizing method.
That could be. I mean, I know a lot of people that repack their games.
Yeah. Speaking of which, the art also got a huge upgrade. The original game, most of the card artwork was a lot of it looked like stock photography or stock illustrations, honestly, but there was a lot of aesthetic care and consistency involved in this new version.
That's good. Well, it's one of my
Which you
favorite
can
games
also
to
see if
play.
you scroll through.
When I used to show up at game night, I always looked for new games to play. But barring that, and barring finding the people I typically played with, I would look for games like this as my staples. Terraforming Mars. Oh, what's that one I really liked here? The dwarven one. What's my favorite board game? Caverna. That's right. I love
I've heard that's
Caverna.
good.
I love Through the Ages, Terra Mystica. Those are the kind of games that I would look for if like my regular group wasn't there, or their table was already full, and there wasn't any new game to try out that I was really interested in. Those are the ones I'd gravitate towards because these are my bread and butter kind of games. I love moving parts. I love complex strategies, and this is something that I could sink my teeth into. I mean, it's like,
And it's
but then me and you and a few others, we're not the average board gamer. We're a little bit more extreme, Greg. I mean, we've got hundreds of games in our personal collection.
sure, but all the more reason to have these mid-tier complexity games that can get people
The
across
chasm.
the table, so to speak, from games like Sorry and
Um,
and what have you, Monopoly, to the more complex, more modern stuff. It's even an aspirational game. I'm gonna put a link in the chat in your chat. Dicebreaker did an article where they talked to an actual astronomer who works for the Mars Society, an actual group, and talking to her about the likelihood of being able to terraform Mars in real life, and asking to what extent the mechanics accurately emulate the process of hypothetically terraforming a planet. The technology doesn't exist now, obviously, but in terms of how long it would take and some of the technology necessary to make that happen, it is a lot more spot on than you would expect for
A board
a
game.
conceptual sci-fi game. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's
the kind
it.
of thing
Like
that
you said,
somebody.
and there's stages in games. Like there's your family friendly games, which is Sorry, Monopoly, Clue, Trivial Pursuit, Connect Four, Chess, Checkers. Then you've got your quick starter games like Tiny Epic. Insert subtitle here because there were several Tiny Epics.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
or Biblios, or all the who, who killed Hitler, things like that. And then you go into, like you said, these mid-level games, which in this case it's like a mid-level between playing those tiny epics and stuff, and going full bore with Terraforming Mars, the full version, which is the
Mm-hmm.
much more serious gamer game. And if you can go through those stages, you find that more and more people could find themselves in actually actively enjoying those high end games, but they don't always want to be thrown down into the deep end right off the bat.
Sure.
And they're
And
also going to pick only one or two that they may really enjoy. Then there's people like me and you who can't get enough of them and are constantly trying new games out.
sure,
Yeah.
and I believe the same thing about board games that I believe about music. More complexity does not necessarily equal more quality.
That's
And if you
true.
can get the same punch in a smaller package, then you should do so. So if you identify as a casual gamer and you are thinking about upping your game, $40 for Terraforming Mars, the Ares expansion, is very reasonable, considering a lot of bigger, more popular mainstream games like original Terraforming Mars and Caverna and even Clank is $50, isn't it? and it's good, but it's
Clank is $50
nowhere
to
near as
$60, and Caverna runs
and
over
it
$100, $80 to
yeah
$100
the
depending on where you get it.
yeah you want a big box game that's going to entertain 3 to 5 players for a whole evening. You're not
Showing
going to
out
spend less than $50, probably closer to 60, 70,
the same
$80.
price you'd pay for a new
So
video game, $70.
yeah. So to get to that, and you can order it online now. You can only order Ember. Get down. You can order it online, but only through Target. It looks like probably Amazon too. But if you're Amazon shy for some reason, you can get it through Target. It's a good investment,
Right?
and they haven't even done any expansions yet, and I'm sure they will.
And I haven't even gotten the actual original Terraforming Mars yet for my collection. It's on my list. So this might be a good one to get instead. It's a little bit cheaper to get first.
Definitely.
Because I love that game. Okay, now
Yeah,
that's good news.
Yep. Absolutely.
You know, gotta love these games that everybody can truly enjoy. All right. Well, we'll put a pin in that for now. But we always love to hear about new board games and conversions of board games into simpler forms or different forms like digital forms and stuff. So keep them coming. Let's see. Next we have. All right, we've got a piece about the Powerpuff Girls reboot that Philip sharing with us. Go ahead, Philip.
Yes. So
I hadn't even heard about this project.
Oh yeah, you haven't heard about it? Yeah, they are working. The CW is working on a Powerpuff Girls live action reboot show that was going to have Chloe Bennett from Agents of Shield, who she played Quake on Agents of Shield. She was going to play as Blossom, but she has stepped down from the project. They did the pilot episode, which they shot the pilot episode, but they someone decided they didn't like the pilot episode. The executives,
It was too campy.
I'm sure. Yeah, they called it too campy of a feel for it. So they were going back and rewriting and reshooting the pilot episode. And now Chloe Bennett.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, and so now Chloe Bennett has stepped down. We don't have a whole lot of details.
Supposedly
as of now,
it's a scheduling conflict.
Yeah, but I don't know what it's conflicting with. There's some rumors, there's some hopes. My personal hope is that she's going to reprise her role as Quake and come to the MCU, continue her story.
But her current IMDb page doesn't mention anything in pre or post production, so it's up in the air.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that she's going to be maybe they do a show for Sword or something like that. But I don't want to speculate too much on it. But it's interesting. To be honest, the fact that Chloe Bennett was going to be one of the stars was the main reason I had any inkling to watch or try to watch the show. Now I probably will just ignore it if it comes out. The other two stars, Dove Cameron and Yenna Peralt, are planning to stay on as Bubbles and Buttercup, and they got to recast Blossom.
Yeah, I'll probably watch it just to see if I like it. Give it a couple episodes. If it doesn't hook me, I'll probably file it away to maybe binge watch when the whole thing comes out later on YouTube or something. Or more than likely HBO Max. Now the thing is that I'm questioning is the whole point of the Powerpuff Girls and a lot of those cartoon kind of things from that era was the campy nature of the show. So
that's what I was thinking.
Being too campy,
right? Yeah,
doesn't seem like the right choice for reshoot. on something that's based on what's basically the poster child for campy shows. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
Mojo Jojo is like one of the most campy villains you've ever heard, and he's one of the villains mentioned
yeah,
in the article.
Mojo Jojo. Yeah,
I am Mojo
I've read.
Jojo.
I've read in the past, back whenever they were reshooting and stuff, that apparently the executives at CW want this to be a grittier, more grown up Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah,
No.
see, that's just it. Powerpuff
No.
Girls and gritty grown up don't seem to equate to each other.
Yeah, Powerpuff.
Powerpuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are
How how are you gonna make Powerpuff
they
gritty
were
and grown up? I
they
don't
were
know.
they were invented in a lab out of sugar, spice, and everything nice. It's not even like major chemical alchemy here. You
Yeah,
know, it's cliche, freaking campy cartoon logic. How
yeah.
do you go with that campy premise and say, okay, we're
So
going to go Joe serious on this?
so yeah. I mean, I personally didn't have any high expectations or high hopes for the
But
product as it is.
Chloe Bennett could have been a draw. Yeah.
Yeah, Chloe Bennett was the draw because I really loved her on Agents of Shield,
Oh, she was
and
fantastic.
yeah, and I'd love to see her do more. I'd like to see more of her work, and that was
If
why I was giving Powerpuff. That's why Powerpuff Girls was on my radar.
if
Other
everybody
than it
else in
just
Agent and Shields except for her, uh, Coulson and Fitzsimmons had gone away, I'd have still watched Agent of Shield just for those four.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I'm not dissing their pilot because she's awesome, but even her could have been left out. It's just, but the most important ones for me was Coulson because the whole show was built around Coulson, uh, and then she was the focal point character they brought in right off the bat, and a lot of it revolved around her. And then Fitzsimmons were the perfect tech support.
yeah.
You know, for a
I
Marvel
hear,
level show, that would have been great with just them. They didn't need
yeah,
May. They didn't
yeah.
need everybody
Agent
else.
May's great.
She's
That
great. She
actress is
is.
going to be a major role in the book of Boba Fett anyway. So
And
we're
she's
going to see
great.
more of her.
Nice.
She's good.
She's great, but Chloe Bennett really almost took the show even more than Coulson did.
Yeah,
And he was the focal point of the show in the first place. Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, so they were the two leads, and everybody else was just gravy. And
Mhm.
so, except I don't think they could have fully done the show without Fitzsimmons because they really needed their unique flavor of tech support.
They the last season basically didn't have Fitz.
Yeah, I
I don't know
know.
if you remember that. Fitz was in
Yeah,
like one episode, I think, of the final season.
yeah, because
It
a
was
lot of it
it was kind
was
of weird.
they went really weird in near the end of that series.
And Simmons wasn't quite herself. She
Right,
was in the show, but yeah.
and Mac
So
was
yeah, I
running
just
a lot of the stuff. Yeah, it was getting really weird. Uh, but anyway, still worthwhile to watch. And the trouble with the Agents of Shield as compared to the other Marvel offerings is they set it out to be in the direct Marvel Cinematic Universe, but then they kind of disconnected it and didn't do a whole lot of cross pollination. They did from the movies to the show, but not from the show to the movies.
yeah.
Where the stuff like Loki and WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, those are all kind of expected to cross pollinate through the movies and the TV shows, which means they're
And I
more
mean,
interconnected.
in general, the rule that in short story version, the reason for that is because Kevin Feige had like no control over the TV show
Yeah,
stuff
I
back then.
know. That was back when he wasn't in charge of the entire cinematic arm of Marvel, because that
Yeah,
one guy was still in charge of the TV branch.
yeah,
And then they
yeah.
finally axed him out, which was good.
Yeah. So
Because
we'll see what happens from here.
Kevin Feige has a universal vision that meshes together and you just get on the edge of your seat waiting to see what the next reveal is going to be, because you know it's going to have ramifications all through TV and cinema. Yeah. So yeah, I like you. I would love to see more of Quake and kind of have her reconnect with the cinematic universe. Who do we got here?
A bot.
A bot. Let me block him real quick. Block. Want to become famous? Yeah, not your way, dude. All right. It's
No,
even got
I
a
don't.
cool
It sounds
name
like
with
way too much
Gandalf.
work.
I mean, he even had the name Gandalf in his name. But yeah, he sucked. Okay. Well, we're gonna put a pin in Powerpuffs, but if we hear any more about it, we'll probably update you guys here. And let's go on to the next one here, and this one's mine. Now, this is not normally what you'd expect in this kind of show. There's a app out. There's all kinds of apps for and programs and websites for learning languages out there. The reason I'm bringing up Duolingo is, number one, I'm using it right now, but this is not an advertisement for that as so much as I wanted to point out for the nerds out there that Duolingo in its languages that are available that you can do with the free service, you don't have to pay. You can do Klingon, High Valerian, 2 fantasy languages. High Valerian, of course, is from Game of Thrones, and Klingon from Star Trek. Now, if they threw in Tolkien Alpha, I would be sold all the way to the rafters. I'm personally using it for Japanese because if you're an otaku, you want to be able to watch those animes in the original Japanese and try to understand them as much as you can without dubbing and closed caption. But my plan is to go through, because Duolingo doesn't make you fluent, doesn't claim that it's going to make you fluent. But it helps with other things like, getting conversational with people regularly and stuff. So I'm going to use it, learn my Japanese basics. Then I'm going to watch animes in the original with the closed caption on, try to understand as much as I can that I hear. And then when there's a question about what they're saying and I'm not quite understanding, I can look down at the closed caption to kind of help me translate and thus build my vocabulary in Japanese. So Duolingo is a great little app for that. It's really helpful, and it's like playing a game. So, I mean, it's interesting to jump in and play. You don't feel bored or like you're just doing school lessons. You actually want to strive and they really only at the highest level of dedication that they ask you to do, because it asks you like, what is your goalpost for daily use of the app. The highest is like 30 minutes a day or something like that. It's like 50 experience points is what they expect you to make per day in the game. And my first day, I almost made 1,000. Because I didn't want to put it down. I loved it, and it works on your phone and on your computer and your tablet and whatever. And it's great because you can just go through it and stuff. Now, the paid version gives you a couple of extra things, like you can go back and any questions that you got wrong in the earlier lessons, it'll build like a custom lesson with those and let you go through them again. But you've always got the ability to just go in and practice old lessons. Just hit the practice and it'll shoot you some practice questions and stuff. It's just not necessarily going to focus on the ones you got wrong so that you can keep going them over and over. And it also, the other thing it does is it has a feature if you pay for it to where you can get at any time you can take a progress test. But here you pretty much can only take the progress test at the end of a module. Once you got everything in one set done, you can take the progress test once to see how you did and then go on to the next set of stuff. But I went and got all 5 of the initial beginner lessons up to level 5, which is their max level, on day 1. And that's actually more lessons than you might think, because each lesson had anywhere from 2 to 3 parts, and then you had to do that 5 times in each lesson. So it was quite a bit. And I've created myself a cheat sheet of Japanese
Yeah.
But it's really hard to draw some of these Japanese characters smoothly and everything. I'm looking to refine my cheat sheet too, but it's really great. It sounds like a commercial in a lot of ways, and I'm trying not to make it a commercial. But really, what I'm
But it's a
saying
free
is,
app.
it's a free app, right? And yes, you'll get ads to help you like keep playing, because if you run out of hearts, then you can't go forward in new lessons. But you can always go back and do practice sessions during hearts to go forward too. So you can keep playing by just going back and doing practice sessions. So you can link it to your Facebook or your Google, or I think you can link it to Twitter or Instagram. I don't know. I don't ever link to those things.
Yeah.
Uh,
How long do you say you've been using this app?
oh, how long have I been using it? 2 days.
2
Today's my
days?
second day.
Do you have any Japanese to share with us?
Well, I can count to 12 in Japanese, but I do need to kind of look at my cheat sheet a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, it's ichi, ni, sam, yam, go, noku, nana, echi, kyu, ju, ju-iki, ju-ni. And that's, all the way up from 1 to 12. And actually,
Nice, nice.
there's kind of formula up that when you get past 10, you basically say 10 and then the next digit. So, like, Ju-ichi is 10-1. It's 11.
Okay.
Ju-ni is
Okay.
10-2, 12. uh, and stuff. And then of course, there's konnichiwa, which is thank you. Or no, konnichiwa is hello. And arigato is thank you. And Takai is expensive.
Wait, if origato is thank you, what's double origato?
Domo arigato. I haven't got to domo yet, so I'm not
Well,
sure what domo is yet.
Okay.
But no,
Yeah,
arigato is thank you. Domo arigato is like probably many thanks or something like that, because it's a modifier. Domo
Yeah.
would be a modifier. But
that would be consistent with the song Mr. Roboto.
Domo
Yeah.
arigato, Mr. Roboto. Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Roboto. Yes. I love that song. But yeah,
I'll second everything that Doc has said. I haven't used Duolingo in a couple years, but actually it's been several years. But I did use it for a while to study Gaelic Irish, and you start with the individual words, and the more experience you build up, you start to go into not you don't study sentence structure itself, but you get to learn full sentences. And then after you learn it, you'll take quizzes where it breaks the sentences up into individual words or small phrases, and you have to put it back in correct order by correctly identifying which words mean which things. And so it's got a very nice learning curve. And yeah, you can dump time into it and get 1,000 XP in a day. I like that it incentivizes you to break up the learning over time,
so you
because
get time to
everything
process
I've
it.
read, yeah, absolutely, because everything I've read and heard about the way the human brain learns says you get a lot more benefit out of small incremental studying as opposed to cramming.
Yep.
Right.
Although if
But
it's fun, there's no reason not to stick with it.
and just take breaks in between. Like if you've got a dead day, do a half hour of it, then take a break, then come back and do another half hour. You don't have to do it just all at once and plow through it. Now the only thing is Duolingo is not meant to be done as a standalone tool. It's meant to be used with other
Mm-hmm.
methods of learning. So it doesn't like teach, like Greg said, the sentence structure. And
Yeah.
the sentence structure of other languages is really weird compared to English. And so when it gets to parts of the lessons, it'll put out a sentence and ask you to translate it to English, and you're expected to intuitively know how to rearrange the words to make sense in English.
And that was a challenge that I ran into when I was studying Gaelic Irish, because it is a fundamentally different language. It's not a Latin-based language, And
Right.
it got to a point where I knew what the words meant, but I couldn't structure them correctly, and try as I might, I couldn't figure out the pattern. I couldn't figure out how the sentence was supposed to make sense in this sequence. And there were things that to me looked like inconsistencies in the way the sentences were translating, which might have been a shortcoming of the app or whoever was programming the lessons for that app, or more likely my misunderstanding of how the language itself worked. So maybe
Yeah.
if I went back to it now and tried again, it would make sense.
Yeah, and the further you get from your base language, the more different it's going to seem. Like in Japanese, a lot of words, their entire meaning is changed by the next syllable that they tack on the end of it.
Hmm.
You know, so like you might say uh, "kindo," which was "I'm kin," uh, but then you go, oh, how do they pronounce it? Let me see. Hold on a second. Uh, 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 Kinde is I'm kin, and but they go tin Kindeska is it kin,
That's cool.
and stuff. So make slight changes. Also, like with a lot of languages, America likes to throw in a bunch of little extra things. Like, for instance, when you say you might just say hat and umbrella in Japanese, but when you translate it to English, you got to put in the a hat and an umbrella. Put the little a and the and those little connector words that are superfluous in other languages. They don't worry about it as much as the English language does. you
Hey
know,
Doc,
yeah.
on the subject of learning Japanese, what character system is it using?
Okay, in the
It
character system,
is it using kanji, hiragana, katakana?
it actually has it listed. Hold on a second. Oh wait, I'll just bring it up on another page here.
As
Uh,
it reminded me of a game that I bought on Steam a couple of years ago called Learn Japanese to Survive Hiragana Battle. And have you ever heard of it?
no, actually,
I haven't.
no. That one is a new
It
one to
is
me.
it's a JRPG. It's actually on sale now. It's less than $2 on Steam, and it's good. It teaches you hiragana by showing
Hiragana is what it
you.
uses
Okay, cool.
because I
You
just
might like
checked.
this then.
But
You might like it anyway if you like
it does have
JRPGs.
uh, katakana too because it's got.
Hmm,
I've clicked hiragana is what comes up by default, but it's also got a tab for katakana too, so you can actually look at both kind of ways of doing it.
nice. The
So
video game is interesting in that it teaches you the characters because, as I recall, hiragana is a character for each phenome, each sound that it makes, and so it teaches you like the j sound correlates to this hiragana character, or the k sound correlates to this character,
yeah,
and then it makes you fight. It makes you fight enemies that look like hiragana characters, and the only way you deal damage is if you correctly identify what the sound for that character is. And so you have to learn those in order to pass the combats. And then, kind of like Duolingo, as you gain experience and enter new areas, it introduces new characters, but also reincorporates the old ones so that you don't forget the lower, more foundational levels.
yeah, and it'll also sometimes the thing is kind of weird is like when you're learning numbers, the number seven is nana. But sometimes when you're doing those little fill in the blank things, instead of having a single bubble that's nana, they have two single nas, and you have to know to put them together. you know, Even though they haven't taught you about that, they just expect you to make that leap. Now, Sophia Starr, which is of course Allison, my girlfriend, comments in my chat on Duolingo. You don't have to play it as much as I do, meaning me. I'm an
Mm.
overachiever and have a lot of time on my hands. And schools use this app for extra credit. At least her son's Spanish teachers did. And the app sometimes does point out sentence structure depending on the language, I guess. Um, Sophia, she's learning Spanish as well because she started learning it kind of alongside her son, partly so that she could go over his homework, and because she wanted to learn it anyway. And then the rest was she didn't really mean to smush that entire post all together at once because it was a kind of a long post. But anyway, so the gist
Well,
of
that's good
this
to hear.
is the gist of this is there's lots of languages on the program. They're constantly adding more languages. I mean, you might eventually find that they will have Token Elf or the Avatar language from Avatar. You know,
The Nami.
yeah, you know, because a lot of the fantasy genre franchises are coming out with their new full languages that you can learn, and they're even some of them have got accredited classes in college. I know Klingon and Tolkien Elf does. There's a couple colleges that give accredited classes in those languages. So for a nerd, what better than to go in and learn Klingon alongside ancient Greek or Latin or Gaelic or Japanese or Chinese? And what got me started on this yesterday, actually, is I was rewatching the Jackie Chan remake of The Karate Kid, and on the plane trip over to China in the beginning of the movie, his mom was trying to get him to pay attention to the language lessons on the computer. And I was like, you know what? I've been meaning to try that Duolingo. I've got nothing else to do today. I do that, but it's not Chinese I want to learn. I'm an otaku. I want to learn Japanese. And so I went and just started the Japanese and just like freaking went off on it all day. And it was fun. And that's the thing. We tell people all the time that there's education in these nerdy hobbies and everything else. And one of the keys to this kind of education compared to other types of education is education has always been found to work better when you can make the lessons fun and enjoyable. That's why using something like Dungeons and Dragons to teach children to socialize better, or conflict problem solving resolutions. Allison was like, and he did it all day. I heard that chime many times while I was working because I'm on the computer, and I didn't even have my headphones on. I was just
Ting, oh,
ting. He did another ting. He did another one. Okay. I loved it. I mean, and that's just it. If you make it fun, it's kind of like the old Field of Dreams saying, if you build it, they will come. Well, if you make it fun, they will come. And that's what part and parcel of what we do with Eclectic Endeavors is we take these very, very fun hobbies and help them serve out a lot of education to people. Oh, hi, Godzilla Willie. How you doing? And so Duolingo, I think, in a lot of ways, fits right into the spirit of what we're all about, even though it's just a phone app.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you get a chance, give it a try. Godzilla Willie says hi to you guys too, by the way. He's one of my more respectful ones. He never gets all rude and stuff. So yeah, because Allison will knock them down if they get rude. Faster than me. Okay. Well, we're going to get off Duolingo now, but if you get a chance, just go to Duolingo.com or look it up on your Google Play Store or your iPhone App Store, and because it's available on both. And you can also just go to the website, Duolingo.com, and play it on your computer or your tablet. You don't even have to get the app if you don't want to. And play for free. You know, don't even necessarily bother with paying for it. But if you decide to pay for it, they've got a couple of different payment plans. You know, they got the monthly plan that's like $12.99. The annual plan, which drops it quite a bit. I don't remember what it is. It's something like $6.99 or something. And then they've got a family plan where it ends up being like $1.99 per family member per month or something. So they're not bad plans. It just depends on if you need that extra or not. I mean, I'm thinking I can go through most of it without this extra charge. But if I
Yeah.
did do it, I would think it was worth it. So, hey, anyway, we'll put that to rest for now. But that's another thing is when you guys are trying to give us suggestions for the show, if you come across an interesting app or website that's not necessarily directly a game or a comic book or a movie, that doesn't mean we're not going to cover it. If it's nerdy and if it's like interesting and educational, and so we're going to look at these kind of things and see what fits our audience, and our audience is pretty wide and diverse. So there's a lot that you could find. Next up is okay, Activision Blizzard. We've been keeping up with this for the past few weeks, and here to give us our next couple of updates, Philip Landergan.
Yeah. So we got a couple of new updates. The first one I mentioned is I believe I mentioned this before about how there was an executive named Frances Townsend who was under fire for a couple of reasons. One being one of the big ones was she was tweeting out about the problem with whistleblowers. Now, for people who aren't aware, just a really quick reminder: Activision Blizzard, overall as a company, is being sued by investors and for lying about. Well, they're being sued by investors and they're being sued by the state of California, primarily due to sexual harassment and frat boy culture in the company, and sexual discrimination.
So making
Now,
it basically an unsafe and or unwelcoming workspace.
exactly. And this woman named Frances Townsend, who was on their, she was a part of their company's women's network, an executive sponsor for the women's network, which I'm not 100% sure what the women's network is about, but I take it has something to do with helping it's supposed to be a position of power to help the women that work there. But she was tweeting out about how she tweeted out an article about the problem with whistleblowers, which is not a good time right now to be sharing that kind of a tweet when the company's coming in under fire due to whistleblowers in their company. And then after she was getting called out for that post by her coworkers and staff, she started blocking them on Twitter. On top of all that, not a good look. She then held a meeting, like a Zoom call, with women so that they could tell their stories. And apparently, it was recorded. Not all the women could make it that were supposed to be able to do it, but they were supposed to record it and make that available. But that recording didn't become available. And now she has stepped down from the executive sponsorship position of the Women's Network. She's still working with the company as their chief compliance officer, but she stepped down at least in some position. I don't think it's as much as it should be, as she's the executive vice president of corporate affairs.
Yeah.
She's still in too high of a position, but yeah, she's under a lot of hot water at the moment because of this, and it sounds like she didn't want to hear what they had to say, but I don't know. It's kind of a messed up thing.
And for those who don't know what a whistleblower is, it's somebody who anonymously or not points out the mispractices of a company, which is supposed to be encouraged. But sounds like she's doing the absolute opposite, especially if she's supposed to be one of those go-betweens that people are supposed to go to do that kind of whistleblowing. The last thing she should be doing is discouraging people from whistleblowing, because her job is basically to listen to whistleblowers.
Yeah. She's also deleted her Twitter account after all this too.
At least her corporate one.
It's been kind of a big. Well, supposedly it's her private Twitter account, and so the company says they did not ask her to. I don't know how much I believe on some of this stuff.
Right.
But in more news regarding these allegations and these problems, 3 more senior developers for Blizzard have left the company. The director for Diablo 4, a level designer, so the director of Diablo 4, his name is Luis Barriga, and then a level designer named Jesse McCree, and a World of Warcraft designer named Jonathan LeCraft have all left the company. The and
Rats are
now
abandoning
something
the
that
ship.
I was kind of looking through some. Yeah, they sure are. And if I remember right, here's something I found was interesting. In the article on IGN, they reported both McCree and LeCraft were tied to the recent Cosby Suite report, which revealed that Blizzard developers would gather within a hotel suite to drink and make sexual remarks about the women. And it's been tied to the reported frat culture that led California suing Activision Blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
And then Baraga also worked on he's been working for Blizzard since 2006. Worked on the Diablo 3 and World of Warcraft Legion. So, let's see. There was another person that's part of the Cosby Suite photo that still works with the company, but yeah, a lot of people are abandoning ship. Some people, I'm not sure how many people are leaving on their own accord or how many are leaving because they have to. But
that would be the thing, is to see who's leaving because they don't agree with the company and want to go work somewhere else, and who's leaving because they're part of the problem.
Well, so far, most of the people I've seen that are leaving are people that have been called out as the people that were part of the problem.
Right. And that's the thing.
I linked to the Cosby Suite report article that's linked in that article, and the screenshot and photographic evidence is pretty damning.
Yeah.
The thing is, as long as we, the consumers, show our displeasure at this company, they're going to be forced to fix it or go out of business. And Blizzard Activision is one of the biggest game designing companies in the world. So
yeah,
they
lost T-Mobile as a sponsor for their Overwatch League. So my understanding is there's 3 major investing companies that are invested into their stocks. 2 of them are now suing, and the third one is now
we went over that last week.
Angry with them as well. Yeah, last week we talked about the lawsuit. There was one company that wasn't part of the lawsuit, but now they're
jumping on
putting
board.
them under the fire as well. And I don't remember. Yeah, they're not part of the lawsuit still, but they are. And I can't remember the exact details on that one. I forgot to bring that one up whenever I was preparing for today. But I was listening to a podcast a couple days ago that was talking about the third company. But the title, the subject of that podcast was called, Blizzard investors are mad. And for like 25 minutes, they talked about that investor group specifically. Not the 2 that were suing, but about the other investor group. So there's a lot going on there. So now, I've also seen someone else point out how they've been talking with developers, like the actual developing people, especially the women developers that are part of this company and some that are part of other companies. And they all acknowledge that, the company needs to be held accountable for, but they also feel like if we completely boycott everything they do forever, that is punishing the women that are working at the company, because then they're going to get laid off or fired for not making sales quotas and stuff like that. So that's an interesting argument I've seen getting brought up recently.
But the thing people need to remember with that is the company is using that as a scapegoat tactic to try to defer some of the angst against them, because these developers that are, yes, their jobs may be at risk because of this, but the fact of the matter is they can jump ship It's really
Yeah.
not as a if you're quality enough to be a developer for Blizzard Activision, there's a slew of other gaming companies that will put you to work.
Yeah.
In fact, they would love to put you to work. And it's really sometimes they only hold on to the job for the prestige of working for a company like Blizzard Activision. But the prestige is
Yeah.
going away. Yes, they might get laid off, but if you get laid off under these kind of circumstances, it's not going to necessarily be a black mark on you.
Mm,
If anything,
And
it's
some of
going to
these,
show that you've had enough loyalty to stay with the company, even with the mistreatment, so that if you went to another company, you might give them the same kind of loyalty, and help weather the storm until the company, you know, either proves its
Yeah.
innocence or comes out as, at fault, and then you finally jump ship. So
Yeah.
these are the people I'd be
So
looking to hire.
I
You know,
yeah. So I don't want to necessarily tell everybody else how they should think or what they should do. But I do absolutely think everyone should be keeping in mind what kind of behavior the company has had, and make their own decision. Me personally, I'm intending on a temporary boycott myself. Once things are fixed and there's information coming out about things actually getting better, then I plan on lifting my personal boycott and renewing, my interest in their properties.
yeah,
But
that's the
I
thing.
want to cover one last. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, don't hold on to your boycott just for the point of it. If they fix things, go ahead and be a member, a subscriber, a client to them again, because if they fix things, then what you did what it's supposed to do. If you keep
Yeah,
boycotting after the fact, you're you're defeating the whole point of the boycott, and now it's becoming
yeah,
malicious. It's like you want justice, not. It's like you always say, you want justice, not revenge. Let's let's
yeah.
just let's just get it to the justice point. Once justice is served, then
That's
you
how I
make
feel
make
about
your make your just decision from that point forward based on their
it.
current new public policies and what you're seeing from them. If it looks like they fixed it, give them the benefit of the doubt. Go ahead, but keep an eye open for them to bait and switch you just in case.
Yes.
and on the subject of the company effectively using their workforce as human shields and being like, no, don't punish us, or otherwise you're punishing them. There are small studios that have formed from people who were so disgruntled with their current work environment, whether it was harassment or just crappy pay or not being able to innovate the way they want to, that they broke off and did their own thing. It's not an easy thing to do,
Yeah.
obviously, but but having a low sales quota or getting sacked from, like you said, a company as prestigious as Activision Blizzard,
Under these
it'll
circumstances,
hurt for a while, but the pain will pass.
and having it happen
So.
under these circumstances is not necessarily going to give you the black eye that
Yeah,
it normally
hell,
would give
it might
you.
put you up a level or two.
Because, like I said, these people are still staying the course, even though uh, other people are jumping ship, and rightfully so. They're still like supporting the company. That shows a level of loyalty that you can't pay for normally. You know,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and
So
so if they get canned after that, I think that people should be lining up wanting their resumes in their inbox.
yeah. Now, that's the last I wanted to say about this specific updates. I'm sure I'll be back with more later.
Right?
But while we're on Activision Blizzard, I just want to do a really quick mention of another subject about what I think is another mistake that Activision Blizzard is working on is the Diablo 2 game, the new version of it. I know we talked about this game before. If I remember right,
Oh,
both of you
we were
are really
both
excited about this game.
Hmm.
until the
Yeah,
Activision problems, yeah.
yeah.
But
So
but yeah, and I remember what you said
it's
with this
come out.
update.
yeah, it has come out that the new Diablo 2 game, was it Diablo 2 Resurrected, will not have TCP/IP support. Which, for those not necessarily to know, that means to play up multiplayer, you've got to play while connected to the server. You can't play like LAN connections, just local network multiplayer, or PvP. So it makes it where you can't like just host each other with PvP
Yeah,
sharing.
it
You
stands
have to
for,
connect to their
if I
network, their
remember,
battle.net service.
if I remember correctly, it stands for Terminal Connection Protocol and Internet Protocol (TCP/IP). But
Yeah.
yeah,
So
and
yeah,
it's
you won't have the ability to circumvent their battle.net service. You have to play
you won't go
online
peer
through
to
the battle.net
peer.
service
You
with
won't
the
go
new
peer to
game.
peer. Is basically it. Because what it
Yeah.
used to be is when Diablo 1 and Diablo 2 were out, they had TCP/IP support. So instead of connecting to BattleNet to play together, you could play on a private server or a hosted TCP/IP node on like a bulletin board that was supporting it. But now you
Yep.
have to go through BattleNet to do the multiplayer modes, which is going to crimp some people's style because LAN parties will become a thing of the past. Which they kind of already are. Now you run a
Yeah.
LAN party, you're still going to have a high-speed connection to the internet to bring in BattleNet into the equation, where before
Yeah.
you could have a high-speed local internet and never talk to an outside server.
Yeah.
But
I don't know how big of an effect it'll have on today's audiences, but I'm sure that old school fans, I'm sure, are going to be disappointed
it'll have
in
some
this
effect on old
change.
schoolers. New schoolers, for the most part, won't be affected too much because half of them don't even know what TCP/IP is or ever used a peer-to-peer network in the first place. They
Yeah.
grew up in the internet generation where everything used the internet to bridge. They didn't have a bunch of private network LAN parties
Ooh.
and stuff to go to, so they don't know what they're missing on that. And that's fine. The game environment evolves. It just would be nice if they kept the support up a little bit longer for us grognards out there that kind of like to do things our own way.
Well, I
Yeah.
wonder what the logic was for eliminating that in the first place. Was it a cost-saving measure, or do they want people to use the servers so they can more easily monitor activity and player choices?
Track usage.
Um.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it has a combination. I think it's mostly a combination of um, tracking usage and also like control. I'm sure is going to be a large part of it too, because when you have private servers, that opens up a lot of windows for possibly cheating or
Hacks of different
other things
kinds.
that the developers might want to do. Yeah,
And the other thing with
and
the
when you're
private,
having to go,
go ahead.
what was that?
The other thing with private servers
Well, I was
is,
just saying.
do you want me to go ahead or not?
You go ahead. You go ahead. You go
Okay. The other thing with private servers is it's hard to track usage for when you want to give numbers out to people about how many people are playing multiplayer because those numbers don't come in to the main office. They don't see those numbers,
Mm.
but they see the login numbers to BattleNet, so they can go to their investors and stuff and say, "Hey, look, BattleNet's up 63% or down 22% or whatever," and they have those numbers there to give. Where if people are doing a lot of peer-to-peer LAN type party networks and stuff, they can have the game could be really popular in multiplayer format, but they don't know it because they're not seeing any numbers to reflect it.
Yep.
Okay, now
So
go ahead
that's
with what
all
you
I
were
have
going
to
to
say
say,
about
Vince.
Activision Blizzard.
Okay,
I mean, that's more or less it.
Yeah.
okay, we're going to go into our next thing,
Mm.
which now this is kind of a dreaded term for some of the old school gamers, and then it's a nostalgia term for others. But I don't think it's getting used exactly the way that this term is. I'm just kind of saying it with a little bit of reticence before I switch over. The next topic is on Greg, and it's called THAC0. But it's spelled with an extra K in there.
Yeah, it's a nostalgic term which I hope alludes to the fondness of the creators for this company and this product they're developing.
Right.
But THAC0 is just the company name. The product they're making, which is having a Kickstarter next month, is called a Hex. Now, I stumbled across it was probably a sponsored ad on Instagram showing this project, and I thought it looked interesting. This was months ago, and so I signed on to the mailing list, and every couple of months I'd get an email saying, "Hey, we're still working on things. Look at our new designs." I think their Instagram is the best demonstration of what this is, although some of the pictures and GIFs on this webpage too are excellent demonstrations. The Kickstarter is going to go live on September 1st, and it is plastic hexes that, if you look closely in the picture, you'll see have little magnets on each side that can connect together and form various utilities depending on what kind of game you're playing, even as extreme as you see there, accommodating a whole
Game board.
Settlers of Catan player board,
Yeah, I was going to
elevating
say, it
it
looks
and
like
making spaces for all the roads.
It looks like it's specifically designed to facilitate games like Takinoko or Settlers of Catan here. But they
Yeah,
also
or
have,
Twilight Imperium.
yeah, but if you look at each of the hexes, they've got different styles of hexes through here. So you've got some hexes that can also be like money organizers for Monopoly or card organizers, some that are dice organizers, some for tokens and everything. So it's a wide variety of potential uses so that you can use it with just about every game on your shelf. Little small for a dice roller tray, even though
Maybe if you're using miniature dice.
If you're using miniature dice, or maybe it's a landing point for a tower. But otherwise, it's a little small because you can't get more than just a couple dice before you fill the tray too much. And for most people who want a dice rolling tray, they want a little bit bigger surface than that. But that's okay. That's only one of many things. The fact that you can put an entire Settlers of Catan grid together and you don't have to worry about the table getting bumped, messing up your setup.
The fact that they're designed to snap together and Voltron into all different kinds of configurations, and based on the vertical design, it looks like they're also designed to stack together for storage. And so it looks like it takes up not very much space, and it can be compartmentalized for all kinds of game setups depending on what kind of board game you're playing. I'm seeing Monopoly, I'm seeing D&D figurines.
Settlers of Catan, Terraforming Mars.
I think those are the Genesis. Under the pair image, I think those are the Genesis dice from the Fantasy Flight game, the Fantasy Flight RPG.
And the thing is, I see,
or it might
also,
be something else.
I think part of the inspiration of these, I think, is the old Hero Quest game, because it had those hex tiles that could interlock and stack up for different terrain builds, different elevations. You could combine that, so you could put your Hero Quest inserts into these things, and then play Hero Quest with it. Then turn around and break out your Takinoko set and play Takinoko, and then have a Settlers of Catan tournament. I mean, those are all examples of games where you got to put down these hex-shaped tiles, and a slight bump on the table screws everything up.
Yeah, and it doesn't show on any of these pages, but there's a picture on their Instagram showing what they're calling a Hex Mini. It looks about 1/6 the size of the regular bit. And, second... is it going from newest to oldest? If you go to the top of the page, it's the second row, first picture.
I don't want to log
in.
in.
But while you're on this section,
I
You
want
shouldn't
to.
have to. You should just be able to click on pictures and look at them.
No, it threw that
Well,
Instagram thing in front of me, and it wants me to sign up.
oh well, don't worry about it then. But even here, you can see, and this is one of the things that I was cautious of because the main website is very bare bones. In fact, I think that last page you're on is the only page on their website. Everything else is sign up to our email list or link to our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But if you go to the bottom of their Instagram feed, which goes back to March, and then scroll up, you can see the progression of their development. You can see the work they put in refining the base design and coming up with all these different designs. So this is something that gives me faith that what this appears to be their first ever project, and I can find very little on the people involved or anything else that they've been involved in. But the length of time that they've been developing it makes me think, okay, this is something they're serious about and not, oh, this is somebody pitching a hack project to
Fly
get an
by night.
influx of cash for something they have no intention to develop.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is actually really good. I love this. And you say that the Kickstarter starts next month?
The Kickstarter starts at 11 o'clock Central Time, our time, on September 1st.
Oh wow! Right at the beginning of
And
the month.
they will be having early bird specials. I want to do more research on them, see if I can find out more about them. But as this looks like a good project, and I'm willing to give them the benefit of some doubt.
Mm. Like I said, as I've said before on Kickstarters, I usually only support one Kickstarter a year, and I've already done it this year. But I might break down and make this in my early bird for next year because this is pretty good stuff. I can see
Yeah, and
just
if
so
the
many
Kickstarter goes
uses for
well
what I've
enough, they
got.
may. Yeah, if the Kickstarter goes well enough, they may go into general mass production. You may be able to buy buy a stack of just the bowls or just the card slots or an assorted, like, here's two of everything on store shelves.
Yeah, I
So
think
here's
optimally for
hoping.
me would be something like 4 to 6 of everything because that way you could handle 4 to 6 players in just about any game. But yeah, that's pretty neat. And like I said, my girlfriend loves Settlers of Catan, so that would be great for doing a Settlers of Catan board in different configurations. Because once again, I'm looking right up and see the Settlers of Catan New York state configuration right over my computer that we always have. Because you could get the alternative state map configurations for Catan.
Oh,
Uh,
I just found an interesting comment on their Facebook page. Somebody was asking what other games do these work with, like how you show Catan working with it. And they responded directly, there are two levels on each hex. The lower level can hold smaller hexes around the size of games like Catan. The upper level can hold larger tiles like Eclipse New Dawn for the Galaxy. So they're very
nice.
modular. They're even more modular than I thought they were.
That is
They put a
that.
lot of work into this.
I love versatile tools. I mean, anything that you can use and put in your toolbox because it's not just a single use item is all they like. As a chef, we get a lot of offers for tools that are good for doing just one thing, and then we try to find other ways to use them. And I generally don't invest in those things, but anything that you can use in multiple things, like a good chef's knife, is essential because you can use it in 500 different ways in the kitchen. And that's what I like, tools that you can use in multiple different situations. And so these intrigue me quite a bit.
Hmm.
And I mean, I've got, like I said, 100 and some games on my game shelf, and this could probably work with it, half of them in some capacity or another, you know, and that would be great because it would help organize, and I wouldn't have to go to that other company that does the organizational trays necessarily. that are custom for each individual game, because these ones you could mix, match, and make into different configurations. You know, like Terraforming Mars. There's so many fiddly pieces there. This would be a great way to store some of your Terraforming Mars pieces.
Yeah, if I didn't already have the Broken Token organizer for that,
That's the
this
company
would
I couldn't
be
think it was. Broken
perfect.
Token. Broken Token, which is not a
Yeah.
bad company. Don't get me wrong. I love Broken Token stuff.
Oh,
It's
they're
just a little
yeah, they're
pricey for
consistently
my
amazing.
for my taste.
They are, but you get what you pay for.
But you do get what you pay for, and they're specific in that they've analyzed the games that they're making their trays for, so that if you get a specific tray built for a specific game, it is like the perfect tray for that game. So, Broken Token's good quality product. I really want to get it for my Caverna set, but I could get a set something like this instead, and it might work just as good.
Yeah. We'll just have to
So
see how it develops and what the individual or packaged units cost.
right. Well, let's see
Yeah.
here. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next thing if there's no other comments on
Yep.
Taco. Okay. Next, we've got. Okay. As always, every week I do a flashback recommendation, and we do a lot of modern movies here at Game Time. We handle the things as they release as much as we can without breaking our bank accounts. Can't always afford to go see everything. But I like to throw a throwback once a week to remind you that in the 70s and 80s, without necessarily the capability as far as special effects, there was sometimes some great gems out there. And some of them are really campy, and some of them are just plain, idiot fun, what they call drunk humor shows. And some are really great, and we've talked about a lot in the past. This one is Dreamscape. Now, the premise of the show is some people have some ability and psychic talent. They're telepathic, but to lesser degrees and stuff. And Dennis Quaid is one of the guys that's psychic, and the people who are doing this one study, they know him from an earlier study when he was a kid with them, and they were studying some of his psychokinetic powers. And they bring him on to this study because they're now studying dreams, and specifically they're sending people into other people's dreams because they're chronic nightmare sufferers. And the dreamscaper, the person who comes in, their job is to break him out of the nightmare cycle and kind of cure them of their nightmare thing. Help them defeat the boogeyman, help them come to terms with whatever it is their subconscious has been wrestling with, whatever, because as you know, a lot of the biggest theories in dreams is that that's just like a giant psychological wasteland where our subconscious just dumps all our fears and stuff that we don't necessarily want to face directly just into the one big lump. And that's what dreams come from. There are ways to deal with these psychological like bits and pieces of our lives that we couldn't face directly, but we can face indirectly in our dreams. Part of the reason that you might remember it as soon as you wake up, but it fades really fast because the subconscious is protecting you from the details. But anyway, Dennis Quaid goes in, and at the time he joins the group, none of the other psychics except one have ever been able to successfully dreamscape in without, losing their mind or dying. You come to find out through the movie that if you die in a dream, you die in reality because your heart can stop or you'll get a stroke or whatever. And so, but Dennis Quaid's got a natural talent to it, and he even has the ability eventually in the movie to connect to somebody else's dreams without being hooked up to all the machines or being on all the extra drugs and stuff. So he can like distance hook up to somebody. And it turns out that the other guy that can do it they look in his file and they find out that he's a bit of a psychopath, you know, and that part might be why he's surviving is because he don't give a shit about anybody but himself. But anyway, I don't want to give away the whole movie, especially the ending or anything. But if you get a chance, Dreamscape is available on Tubi, so you can go and watch Dreamscape there. And if I remember correctly, it was on HBO Max too, but I don't quote me on that. Either that or
Right.
Amazon Prime. But I think there was one other service that had it for free. But
It says it's free on Tubi.
Tubi just
Yeah.
means you have to deal with commercials, but
Yeah.
but it's a great old movie. And Dennis Quaid, as we all know, he's a great actor, both dramatic and comedy, and this gives him a little bit of ability to touch on both. And it's in the same time period as movies like Inner Space and stuff like that came out, which I think also starred Dennis Quaid. Inner Space. So give it a shot, and you'll be glad you did. Next week I'll come back with another flashback recommendation. You never know what it'll be. Depends on what hits my fancy this week, and that I can find to stream, because I try only to recommend stuff that you can find on one of the streaming services, either free or a paid service. Now, I'm not currently using Netflix, so I don't even have that in my list of options, but I am looking at HBO Max, Amazon Prime, Tubi, Pluto, Hulu, Discovery, and Paramount Plus, and those are the ones I'm using to kind of give you an option. Plus, of course, there's like the CW and the NBC apps. But this one I know you can watch on Tubi. And I don't want to spend too much time on it, but that's what that one is. Next up, Philip had a really nice, exciting little thing here for you Star Wars fans. You want to talk about that, Philip?
Yeah. So let me make this short and sweet. If you remember what Tamagotchis are, or if you don't remember what Tamagotchis are, they were a big item back in the 90s, where you had like this little electronic device pet that you had to take on walks and feed it
They were
and all that
digital
jazz.
keychain pets.
Yeah, digital keychain pets. And they are apparently coming back, and we now have a new Tamagotchi Star Wars R2-D2 that's coming out. That's available for pre-orders now. They are releasing November 11th of this year, and they're $20 each. We got a couple different color options here.
It's from
Basically,
Bandai.
one is more white with blue colors, and then the other one's blue with white.
So one's blue with white highlights and one's white with blue highlights.
Yes, that's what I was looking for, was highlights. For some reason, I couldn't think of the word highlights. So yeah, if you're nostalgic for Tamagotchis and you're a Star Wars fan, take a look at these. I don't know how many they're going to be making, but
if it takes
usually
off,
Tamagotchis aren't in a huge volume.
and if it takes off, you might start seeing some other Tamagotchis in the series, like BB from the newer Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
The other droid. I know my best friend, Crystal, is an absolute Star Wars fanatic. She'll take anything and everything having to do with Star Wars, and especially droids. BB and R2-D2 are our two favorite characters, I think, on the planet. So I would probably get her one of these for her birthday or Christmas or something. So, in fact, I'd almost probably have to get one of each for her. One with each color scheme. Maybe one for her and one for her wife. so that they could kind of take care of them together. Because that's the other thing was the Tamagotchis, is there was kind of a sort of an interactive kind of thing with it. You could send them to play and stuff, and I don't remember all the interactions you could do with them, but one of the important things of the Tamagotchi wasn't just feeding it and letting it get rest, but also to play with like a pet.
Yeah,
You got to play with your
yeah.
pets, and so this would go over really well with her. I think she'd be fussing with it more than a modern day kid with their smartwatch.
So yeah, just a short, quick little bit. I think it's pretty cool. Easy to find if you have an interest in those.
And of course,
It
anything
looks
with
cute.
Star Wars
Looks
on
cute.
it. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Greg.
It looks cute, and I love R2D2. I don't take good enough care of myself. I don't know if I'm qualified to take care of a Tamagotchi at this point.
There are a lot of people that I knew who killed off several of their Tamagotchis. So uh,
Yeah, they can be hard to keep alive.
I kept mine alive for a long time. I was a pretty obsessive one when it comes to those kind of things. I liked things like Tamagotchi, and I used to play on a couple of other like of the old websites that did things like collecting dragon eggs and hatching different dragons, and you had to keep track of them, and or other animal things. I can't even remember what the name of some of the old websites were, but I used to log into them all the time and keep track of different digital pets throughout the internet because it was just something I like to do. But I can get a little obsessive at times
Yeah.
until I find something else to take my obsession away, and then it could get completely forgotten. And then I, like I said, can't even remember what the name of the last one was I did, and I was pretty obsessed with it.
Yeah.
uh, but I'd probably go back and I'd still have my collection of monsters, and I had several rare ones that were in demand. So who knows? I might even be able to fawn those off and get me really started in the game again. If I was to remember what it was.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I might get a Tamagotchi. I'm not as big of a Star Wars fan as some people. I'm a nerd, but I'm more of a general all around nerd, which means I like Star Trek and Star Wars about equal. I'd rather watch Doctor Who if you really gave me the choice, or Firefly, Babylon 5 maybe. Lex, Farscape, I like interesting shows. I don't like to like totally put all my eggs in one franchise basket, as it were. But there's a lot of total Star Wars fanatics that'll sit and argue midichlorians for hours on end,
Mm.
and the fact that they are or are not valid, and they're not. But anyway, uh, so that's a good update. Anything more on that before we go ahead?
I think that's it.
Okay, I think we're pretty much done before the media set. So a lot of times Greg leaves us at this point. Are you going to be doing that again today, Greg?
Yes, I will.
Okay, well, say goodbye to Greg. You can see Greg. He's
Mm-hmm.
usually broadcasting on Thursdays, so tomorrow afternoon
Mm-hmm.
on Queen City Cardboard. You can also find him under Queen City Cardboard or Greg Pullman on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. The entire internet. Just look for Greg or Queen City Cardboard, and it'll probably end up getting you to him. And as we said, he's our director of tabletop gaming. Next week he will not be with us, as next week is the third Wednesday of the month. For those who don't remember, every third Wednesday of the month we can catch Greg over at a Holdfast Brewing Company, where he handles our live tabletop day there in conjunction with their puzzle battle night and everything. We can go in. He brings several quick casual games, the easy, under an hour games, and then he might bring something a little bit more crunchy for those who want to stick around and play something a little bit more. But you're generally not going to hang around for like a 4 or 5 hour game there.
Yeah, I've been leaving the big ones behind lately. They tend to be clunky and get in the way. Just
Yeah,
trying to keep it under half an hour.
yeah, keep it under half an hour. But if you really want one crunchy one, you don't want it to go more than an hour and a half, maybe. Uh, at settings like that, I
Plus, I
understand
want
that
to make sure
completely.
there's time to do the puzzle race
Right, because a lot of people
because
want
I've
to
been
do the
having
puzzle
fun with
race.
that.
Yeah, they do a puzzle race there where they give everybody the same basic puzzle, and then it's a race to see which team can put the puzzle together fastest. or it's the same number of pieces puzzle or whatever. And while you're there, enjoy several different microbrews, uh, local and imported beers, and some pretty good eats, as I understand too. So, in fact, I've been there before. The eats are pretty good. So yeah, check him out at Holdfast Brewing Company. And while you're there, say hi to Greg. And if you have an idea for our show, let Greg know, and he'll pass it along to us. Or you can just let us know by dropping us a note on Facebook or as a comment on like our one of our YouTube rebroadcasts. And you can always find on my channel of YouTube, looking up Gamer Seuss, you can find all the previous episodes of Game Time in its own playlist there. And we're going to be starting now that we're simulcasting on the Springfield Game Expo channel. You can also find them on the Springfield Game Expo YouTube channel as it starts to build up. So have a good night, Greg.
Good night.
All right.
Take care,
Good night,
everyone.
Greg.
Now, into the depths of madness. In other words, TV. Okay.
Yeah.
First off, I'm going to go ahead and mention before we get into any specific shows, there's been a lot of breaks and inconsistencies in Supergirl this year, and people have been wondering why. Now, we explained a couple of weeks ago why they had the multiple breaks in Superman and Lois is because somebody tested positive for COVID on the set. And so, in fact, that's one of the reasons Supergirl started when it did, because it was actually not set to start as early as it did. And that's another reason for the breaks, because it wasn't ready to go all the way through yet. So they did a few episodes and then they went on hiatus. Well, this last hiatus was their mid-season break. The delays and stuff were partly because of COVID, but also because of Benoit's pregnancy. Because the main character that plays Kara, or Supergirl, was pregnant. And as she was getting closer to showing, there was less and less she could do on air. That's why the last couple episodes right before the break, we really didn't see much of her at all, because it was more focused on Dreamer and Brainy. And the rest of the team kind of looking for her. And she got like really small parts of that. And that was because of the fact that she's like, her pregnancy was proceeding. And now they're basically, her pregnancy's just about over with, so they'll be coming back here in just a couple weeks. And then there are basically, I want to say 7 more episodes, or 8 more episodes. 8 more episodes, because it'll be 13 through 20. Because there are supposed to be a full 20 episodes of the show. And then that's going to end the series completely. But she's still going to be open for coming in for cameos on the other shows in the CW network. But I just wanted to update everybody on that to let you know that they're not just randomly hitting us with break times in between. It's because of COVID, because of a pregnancy, because of actual reasons behind it that they may not have always come out and said unless people came and asked. So that's the thing. But regardless of that, we've got some great shows that are back. This week saw a heyday of shows, plus the tail end of last week after our last show. So we'll be talking about the Suicide Squad probably last this week, but we're probably not going to spend as much time as we normally would just because we're already so deep into the show. And we're going to postpone one of the shows that came out this week till next week because Philip wasn't able to watch it. Because when he looked for it, it hadn't dropped yet. So he thought it was another week away. But basically, we got the return of Legends of Tomorrow. We've got the return of Superman and Lois. And believe me, that episode right there is worth our whole show this week. It's amazing. We're going to talk about that. We've got the What If cartoon on Disney Plus. And then the one we're going to put off till next week is the long-anticipated Stargirl Season 2 premiere that dropped last night at about 1 a.m. Central Time. Of course, Philip was on at about midnight when Superman and Lois dropped, but didn't see Stargirl, so he thought maybe he had another week to wait. But it kind of waited till 1 o'clock to drop. And so that's why he missed it, and it's no fault of anybody's, but so we're going to hold off on talking about it. So next week we'll talk about episode 1 and 2, which is okay when a new series or season starts. Sometimes we like to do a little bit of delay anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey, I think you might need to fix our display for with Greg
I
dropping
haven't
out.
switched to 2 of us. Yep, let me go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
I forget to do that at times. Let me see. There's that. Then go here, and there we go. Should be good now. Yeah, I forget to do
There
that
we
when
go.
Greg leaves. Thank you for pointing that out, though. And then the other thing that is going to be on next week's, just to prepare people, is tomorrow is the premiere of season 3 of The Titans on HBO Max. So we will be discussing that next week as well. So we'll have quite a bit to do next week. And then the following week, I think, will be when Supergirl's back. So we got so much going on. And
Yeah.
we're in a media heyday. We're in a plethora of media. And let's get started. We're going to, as usual, we do this in kind of an order here. We always do Legend of Tomorrow because it comes out on Sunday. So Legend of Tomorrow came back up, and this is a kind of an interesting episode, I thought. It had a bowling theme to it. A lot of things were going on in the beginning. First, Steele and his girlfriend from the Totem were going out to camp to spend some time alone because she had about 24 hours till she had to go back into the Totem and switch with the other Ari for a little while. I don't know if they ever kind of just said why she couldn't be out longer than a certain amount of time. Probably something
to do with the timeline, like being out in the timeline that she doesn't exist in.
Could corrupt the timeline. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Then while they're doing that, Sarah and Mick and Schooner and what's her name? I can't think of her name. Are out, and they're trying. What was it they were trying to do when they got suddenly disappeared?
They were trying to track down another alien. They were looking
pod.
for an alien out in that area.
They were looking for an alien pod.
An alien pod.
That's right. And while they're Eva is trying on wedding dresses.
Yeah.
What's his name? Bayrod is on the ship with Gary and Ava. Bayrod's just chilling, trying to make like pot brownies and shit. And Constantine's there, and he's like abusing his magic because of those freaking vials of. I'm thinking there's some kind of empowered blood potion. They never quite explain exactly what's in it, but we know it's red, and we know it comes from a vampire who's selling it, so it probably has something to do with blood. But it packs a magical wallop, and it's addictive, and it's the only way that Constantine has power right now. So they're left on the Wave Rider. Anyway, they open up the pod, Sarah and them, and there's this cube in there. And they're handling the cube, and they're passing it from one to the other. But once all 4 of them's hands touch the cube at the same time, shoop, they're gone. And they appear at this bowling alley in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And
by the middle of nowhere, we mean
literally
floating in space.
Yeah, we mean the middle of nowhere in outer space. Deep space.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that what's his name? Steele. I can't think of the character's name, but Steele is his alter ego. Nate, that's right. Nate and Ari are out there trying to camp to the campsite because they're going to do the camping thing, unplug and do everything, and they They get to their campsite that they had reserved, and there's this other couple there in this campsite, and they've got every modern device hooked into the truck imaginable. They got a hot tub. They've got like automatic hot dog roasters. They got everything.
Yeah.
And
They have basically a nice hotel room suite outdoors.
Outdoors, yeah. And the one girl, like, it seems like the only thing she can say is rock and roll. Because she says it after everything.
She says that line so many times, yeah.
She does. She totally goes, rock and roll. So many times you get sick of hearing it. Anyway.
Yeah. I think there's even a point where something doesn't go right, and she's like, that's not rock and roll.
And it's at the very end of the episode. But yeah, we're near the end. But she's like, rock and roll and stuff. And they're like, no, we'll go and find another campsite. Because they want to be alone, you know. They're trying to, that's why they got out the Wade Riders, so they wouldn't be surrounded by the legends. And so they could spend time reconnecting. And it turns out that there's, like, the Earth is, like, somehow been wrenched from its place in space. And we eventually figure out that the Earth has been turned into a giant cosmic bowling ball used by this one bad team of bowlers that are challenging everybody that comes into the bowling rink to a game of what they call cosmic bowling. And in cosmic bowling, if you lose, your entire planet and your team and everybody all get sucked up into this bowling ball and put on their trophy rack for all the time until they lose and can be set free. And nobody's ever beaten them. The guy that runs the bowling alley, he finds out that they're from Earth. He's like, wow, man. Because, like, Earth is where bowling was invented, and he's, like, obsessed with bowling. He says, but his bowling alley is, like, dead now, mostly because nobody wants to come bowl because these assholes keep challenging people and driving them off. And
taking their planets.
Yeah, one by one. And while Sarah's talking to this guy, he's asking her basically to fight the guy, but to not challenge him until they're ready. You know, so they can get a few practice frames in or whatever. But they're over there finishing their bowl against this one team and beating the crap out of him. And Spooner makes the mistake of challenging them to or accepting their challenge to a bowling match.
At the same time, she's accepting the challenge with bowling against them. The bowling alley guy is telling
her, make sure whatever you do, don't challenge until you're ready.
Yeah. You only get one shot.
Yeah, you only get one shot at this. Now, come to find out, Spooner and her foster families, the one normal-ish thing they did was go bowling, and she loved to bowl. Sarah wasn't necessarily a bowler, but her natural ability as an assassin makes her a kick-ass bowler. Mick can't bowl for shit because he's got gloves on his hands covering up some of the scarring from some of what's happened with his alien pregnancy and everything.
No, that's not from the pregnancy, I don't think. I think that's from his youth when he burned his hands burning down his family's house. He was an arsonist. Those were burn scars.
They never say exactly why.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
He briefly showed them, and he's always worn gloves in the whole show. And so he's self-conscious about his burn scars. And
then Astra remembered her name this time. She's never bowled, so she doesn't want to bother to learn it. So she kind of like is a bow out alternate. Because the team is 3 bowlers and an alternate. Is how they bowl in this particular league format. And Sarah goes, she rolls her first ball, you know, when they're practicing, gets a strike. And Spooner goes up and rolls, and she has some fancy footwork, but hey, she gets a strike.
Yeah.
And then Mick goes throw the ball, but he won't get rid of the glove and everything. And it jumps about 3 lanes and hits a couple of pins.
Yeah.
In the wrong lane.
I like White Canary is like, well, you knocked down a few pins. That's a start.
Wrong lane, though.
Maybe stay in our lane next time. Yeah, wrong lane though.
And so anyway, the bad guys end up beating the people they were fighting, and they come on against the legends, and they've basically had like maybe 2 frames of practice. That's it.
Yeah.
The other thing is Asher don't want to put her feet in those stinky ass reusable bowling shoes. Because she's a little bit, for somebody who lived in hell for so long, sometimes she can be kind of dainty.
Yeah. Right? That's so true. It's so bizarre.
She could be more dainty
She
than
grew up in
Ari.
hell and is. Yeah.
And Ari is like a socialite bitch at times. But she can be more dainty than Ari. It's insane, man.
Yeah. It's kind of bizarre.
But
how do you grow up in hell and end up that dainty?
Anyway, they go through the bowling match. And Bayrod figures out that he can't get a hold of the legends. And Gary's all worried that it's going to totally mess with Ava's head if he finds out that they're disconnected from Sarah. So instead of telling Ava, Gary goes in and plays distraction for Ava by making more suggestions on the bride's dress and making it more and more poofy and fancy and all this kind of stuff. And so they basically have a girls' night out freaking wedding dress party, but it's Gary and Ava instead of Ava and a bunch of the girls.
Yeah.
And Constantine comes in and says, "Oh, we can't look at it? No problem." And he casts a spell. First, he cast a spell to try to fix Bayrod's pot brownies, and that just made him explode. And then he ended up, because he don't know his own strength with this new potion, then he cast a spell to supposedly bring them to Earth, even though the Gideon couldn't even detect Earth. And it was like, Wait a minute, you can't, Gideon? No, you don't tell us you can't. You can do everything, Gideon.
Yeah. What do you mean Gideon can't locate Earth?
You're Gideon. You can do everything.
That was the moment I was certain that the Earth was in the bowling alley.
Yep.
I was so suspicious.
I thought it was the ball right before they revealed it was, because I was like, big canyon out of nowhere. I bet you that's a finger hole.
Yeah.
And so anyway, they appear outside the bowling alley and can't get in because the doors are locked because the tournament is going on. So they're like outside trying to get in. The team's not working well together, and then Sarah figures out, wait a minute, one of the fun things about bowling is being a team, coming out and doing those guys. So she brings a load of nachos and some beers and root beers to the table. The mix had to be a real beer. It had to be. They just didn't want to mention that on TV, but that was a beer.
Yeah.
And they go that now Spooner hurts her hand, so she can't keep bowling. So they tag in Astra, and Astra can't bowl for shit.
Oh yeah.
It goes right to the gutter just about every time.
Gutters it. Yeah.
So they teach her how to granny bowl, which is a tried and true method of bowling. It works.
That was the very last bowl. They got down to the very end, and they had one bowl left in the game.
And she granny bowled a strike.
Yeah. Yeah, they were like, Astra has to get a strike to win the game. And that's how they pulled it off. Now, they got Mick to do better because they cut finger holes in his gloves. So
like a bowling glove, because there's special bowling gloves. I used to have them when I bowled bowling league. And they do have only certain fingers covered and other fingers weren't, so that you could bowl without the glove getting in the way of your sensitivity.
Yep.
And it was
when he
like,
did that, he was able to, listen to Schooner's advice and actually bowled fairly decent. Nothing crazy, but pretty decent after that.
at least he didn't gutter ball all the time or jump lanes.
Yeah.
And so they end up winning, and then the bad guys are like, best 2 out of 3?
Yeah.
Total sap move. And Sarah's like, no.
Yeah. And then it was funny how Sarah returned the Earth to where it belongs. She picked up the bowling ball that was the Earth.
The door that is suddenly unlocked.
Yeah, they opened up the door that goes out into space, and then they bowled the ball out the doorway, and then it just kind of kept rolling until it got to the place
to the Milky Way galaxy.
Yeah, and then expanded, took its place.
And then everything was back to normal again.
I like how there was that one bit where the leader of the bad guys was about to bowl, and you could see from Earth, you could see the giant hand coming down and picking up the ball.
Right.
And Nate and Zari used a special alien blaster gun and shot his hand just as he went to bowl, causing him to not get a good throw. Yeah, screwed up his shot real good.
And that's probably the only reason they actually won, is that one missed shot. Because otherwise they wouldn't have had a chance. Because they barely won. But anyway, that's pretty much the Legends episode for the week. Very fun episode. It goes back to the total quirkiness that is Legends of Tomorrow. It de-emphasized Bayrod, which I thought was great because, like Philip, I'm not Bayrod's biggest fan. I think that Bayrod could probably be eliminated and it wouldn't hurt the show one bit. But I like Spooner, I like Astra, I like Ari. I love Nate. And Ava and Sarah are great, and Mick's essential. And even Gary is tolerable. But Bayrod serves no real purpose other than being like an extra bro. Especially with Ray Palmer gone. He's kind of a very bad replacement for Ray Palmer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And bad because Ray Palmer was an excellent character.
There's also a line in there where the owner of the bowling alley recognized that Constantine was, charged up with a large amount of magic.
Yeah.
And made a comment about how that, that's the kind of magic that'll burn you out and kill you or something like that.
Yep. He's like, there's a lot of power in you. You're very observant, Squire. And then it's like, the kind of power that could burn you out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's our next show?
Oh, our next show is probably one of the most anticipated for the returnings that have already started their season. Superman and Lois hit us with another late little break, and it was right as the Eradicator escaped.
Yeah.
And he was actually called the Eradicator. The last we saw of Morgan Edge, he was on the other side of the sun, just soaking up solar energy.
Yeah.
So we come back to the show, and he's finished soaking up all that solar energy, and he's basically kind of now speaking in almost a multi-voice because he's become the Eradicator. He's the physical embodiment of the Eradicator. So now, with his touch, he can revive old Kryptonian consciousness in humans.
Yeah.
So, the town of Smallville, we now go back to the town of Smallville.
I'm really upset about the DOD still being there. It's been 3 weeks.
Yeah.
The DOD is still
the whole town is, and the
it's been 3 weeks since the last episode took place, and so the DOD has actually been there for a couple of months, I think, in total.
Yeah, they've been there for a little while, And then
Yeah.
the editor of the Smallville Gazette had just, as we last saw her, she had just got that story from Lois that she said, "I'm too close to this, you'll have to write it," and gave her the paperwork. And it basically had the DOD occupying Smallville. And the whole town is up in arms. Um, the Lana's family are getting more and more towards wanting to sell everything and move. Everybody but the daughter, who of course wants to stay with Jordan and wants to stay in the only town she's ever known.
Yeah.
And Lana kind of wants to stay, but at the same time she doesn't see the option, and neither does her husband. Because, I mean, he's not even allowed to work. She can't find another job. They can't support themselves. But nobody's buying houses. They're getting really lowballed on prices on their houses. And a lot of businesses
People
closing up and
Yeah,
moving.
a lot of businesses are closing. People are moving away.
Because I know Clark at one point, Lois asked if he can go into town and get a light bulb. And he says, at the hardware store, he says, I can't. The hardware store closed. They moved away. And they want to go back to the kids want to go back to school because it's been long enough. And I was like, hey, what's going to happen whether we're at home or at school? It's all going to happen either way. Might as well let us get back to some semblance of normalcy, Dad, Mom. And Jordan wants to go spend time with his new girlfriend because, hey, it's new. It's a girlfriend. He's a teenager. What do you think he wants to do? He wants to spend every minute of his time with his girlfriend. And Jonathan wants to spend all of his time with John Henry Irons learning how to build super suits and shit. And Jordan wants to go to this party, and they're like, well, maybe take Jonathan with you. And then Jonathan's like, oh, no. I'm not chaperoning my brother.
Yeah.
I didn't sign up for chaperone duty. I want to go out there with John and learn from him. I mean, we got to be prepared because Morgan Edge is still out there and stuff.
Yeah.
But eventually John Henry kicks him out because, like, look, too many questions, man. Get going.
Yeah.
A little bit of insensitivity, too, because Jonathan, he asked about the little roach moth symbol on the steel armor. And Steele said, John Henry said, oh, my daughter did that. And he was like, oh, she helped you build your super suit? Awesome. And he's like, not awesome. She just found her mother had died, and we were fighting for her. Yeah, sorry, I didn't think before I spoke, and all that. So he basically got kicked out of it. So he ends up at the party with Jordan anyway.
Yeah.
Then they find they go to the town meeting, and Lois has volunteered to her dad to help assuage some of the hurt feelings between the town folk and the DOD. But she's telling her dad, "Is you guys got to get pull out of here. You got to give these people something." And he's mad at Lois because that story broke. He says, "Why didn't you quash that story?" I says, "Because." I'm not. It's not my job to squash stories for you. She's the editor anyway. I didn't write the story. That's about the best you're gonna get out of me. And they show up at the town hall.
Pretty much.
And there's all the protests, and the mom of one of the kids that's died or whatever, his death's being investigated. Talks about how they got a letter from the DOD about their investigating, but hadn't heard nothing about it. And they're all confronting the DOD, but then they get an emergency call because Morgan Edge had, of course, escaped at the tail end of the last episode. Well, they just got the notification of that. And that, well, no, they didn't just get the notification of that, but they got the notification that he was attacking Metropolis.
First, it was that he showed up he was back on Earth, and he attacked the DOD base where.
And he broke out his assistant. He broke out his assistant, right?
Yeah, he broke out his. Yeah.
And then he was attacking
Um,
Metropolis with a group of other Kryptonian type soldiers with him. And so
mhm,
Superman goes to help, Lois goes to help, and John Henry goes to help. Uh, their uh,
mm,
their grandfather tried to call the boys. They don't answer their phone. They figure if it's important, he'll call back. You know?
yeah.
But he never
Which
makes
they
that second
also
call.
acknowledge that they also acknowledge that he never calls. And in
Yeah,
these particular times, I would think it would be more prudent to answer the damn call.
right? Considering what's been
You know?
happening, hells yeah. But they don't, so they
Yeah.
stay at the
Answer the
party.
phone.
They stay at the
They're being
party.
stupid teenagers.
Lana, her husband gets an actual job offer a couple of towns over to take over as the fire chief because the other fire chief there is retiring. And one of the few people still loyal to him on the Smallville fire department had put in a good word for him there. So they actually were going to go ahead and take this lowball offer on their house and move to this other town. After, she had just finished assuring Jordan, no, this isn't going to happen. Nobody's is here to buy the house anyway. The last offer was way too low. It's not going to happen. Don't worry, we're not going to end up moving. Then she shows up at the party, which she wasn't really invited to, because she's being treated as the Scarlet Letter, and pulls Jordan away, and they're like tries to stop her from doing that. Say, not cool, party etiquette, man. And it's like Jordan's like, forget it, and goes with her anyway because he don't care about them as much as he cares about her. And she tells him, no, we are moving, and they start talking about trying to do the distance thing. And I think it's just on the tip of freaking Jordan's tongue to tell her about his superpowers. Just on the tip when the grandfather shows up.
Yeah. General Lane shows up.
Before General Lane shows up, though, they see coverage of the Metropolis attack on TV.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
they actually see the scene that's reminiscent of the scene where Lois died on John Henry's world. Because the assistant is flying up behind Lois about to attack her while she's reporting on the top of one of the higher buildings in Metropolis with one of the camera people from the Daily Planet. And they asked her to grab a mic and like it'll come better from you. And she's reporting, and John Henry just manages to get his hammer back online, and instead of attacking one of the people that was after him, he throws it and it goes all the way across and freaking knocks the assistant out of the way and basically saves Lois.
Yeah.
And then he gets his hammer back and saves himself. But he managed to save Lois where he wasn't able to save his wife, Lois. So that was the big redeeming moment that knew had to happen. It finally happened because these shows are very formulaic in that regard. You knew it was going to happen eventually.
Yeah, and it was cool to see him save her. He saved her, risking himself,
Yes.
but he saved her. And while she was about to die, the exact same way that his version of Lois died.
Right. That's where it made it a true redeeming moment.
While reporting on the top of the building with a
it's the exact same mirror scene. Yeah.
Yeah, exact same mirror scene.
That's what really linked it up.
Except it being Superman, it's the assistant. It's the woman Kryptonian. It was like the only difference.
Yeah, but it was still a Kryptonian about to attack her. It just wasn't Kal-El.
Yeah.
And then
heat beamer in the back to the
head. So then the boys get picked up by the grandfather, and he's jetting town, and they talk him into at least taking the girl along with him and dropping her off at home. He says, yeah, of course. And he's like, how'd you find us? He said, I'm the director of the DOD. You think I can't find my grandkids? It's like, duh. And then they're driving, and after the assistant gets defeated by the hammer, and then he gets his hammer back and he defeats the other guy that was on him, and they basically round up all the Kryptonians. Morgan Edge shows up to directly be confronted. And both Superman and John Henry go at him at the same time and bounce off this force shield out of no fucking where. Never expected to happen. It's like, we didn't even touch him. And then he disappeared. And they don't know
it was
what's
like a
going
blue
on.
blast of energy that came from him that knocked them both down.
Yep. And then they don't know what to do. And then it come to find out he flew all the way back to Smallville area and caused a car wreck with Mad Dog Lane's Jeep and the kids in it. They hadn't dropped. Is her name Sarah? Lana's daughter?
The girl?
Yeah.
Lana's daughter?
I can never remember her name.
Man.
But
yeah.
I want to say Sarah or Hope or something like that.
Yes, it's Sarah. It's Sarah.
Okay.
It's Sarah. I just looked it up.
Okay. Well, Sarah's still in there and they're doing that thing. And then Jordan says, use the, whatever it's called, their little signal device for their dad. Yeah. And he says, I lost it in the wreck. And then Morgan...
it flew out of my hand.
Yeah, and then Morgan rips the door open and pulls Jordan out and takes him with him. And she's like, he took Jordan? Why would he take Jordan? Is the girl, Sarah.
Yeah.
And Jordan had basically said, hey, find the signaling device and everything. And they went, and Morgan Edge took him, and he shows up in his Fortress of Solitude. And then he starts sending all this blue energy from his body into Jordan. He's basically doing his Eradicator thing. And at the end, he talks and he says, you've done well, my son. So basically, he just put his dad's consciousness in Jordan. So not just in an Earthling, but in a partial Kryptonian, which could magnify his powers.
Yeah. There was also, after Morgan Edge flew away with Jordan, Jonathan yelled at Sarah, told her to go home and get her dad to get help. And so she takes off running, and then he finds this little signal thing, signals Superman. Superman hears it, flies there. He's like, "What happened?" He's like, Morgan Edge showed up, made this wreck. He took Jordan. You got to find him, Dad. And then
he shoots straight up into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
and has his ultimate listening thing going on, where he's listening to basically every broadcaster voice on the planet, filtering through him, and he don't hear Jordan nowhere, because the only thing Jordan's doing is like this amorphous which couldn't be differentiated from anybody else doing that. So he couldn't find out where he was. And he comes back to Lois and he tells Lois that he got Jordan, and she said, well, go find him. You have to find him. I already did. I already tried. He's nowhere to be found. Da-da-da-da-da. And then that's when it cuts over to Morgan Edge finishing and him going, you've done well, my son. And then cut scene.
Yeah.
Such a cliffhanger.
Credits.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
You're like, why can't it be next Wednesday right now? Because you want to know what's going to happen, because there's only a couple of more episodes of Superman and Lois, too.
I think there's only one episode left for the season.
One or two. There's like 1 or 2 episodes left, and that's it. And, oh, man, I think it might even just be the one. So it's all going to come down to it in this next episode. And it's going to be saying, and I know at some point, if not this season, then next, Jordan's going to tell Sarah his secret. He's not going to be like Clark. He's not going to be like Clark and hold it from Lana the whole time. He's going to eventually give it to Sarah, because he trusts Sarah, and 2, he feels dirt bad about lying to her after everybody else has lied to her so much. And so he's going to reveal it to her. And of course, we're going to have that cliche moment where she doesn't trust him because he's been lying to her. even though she should realize the value of the secret that is, and that it's not 100% his secret to tell and stuff. But nobody ever makes that connection until much later afterwards. So they're going to go through that same rigmarole they always go through.
Yeah.
But oh my freaking God. Now, we're skipping over Stargirl this week because you didn't get a chance to watch it, and I don't even want to ruin it for you. So we'll be talking about 2 episodes of Stargirl next week. So next on the agenda is Marvel's What If. Now, I had a Stargirl thing. It's nice
What
to
if
see.
Peggy Carter became the
Captain
first
America.
Avenger?
Yeah, the first Avenger. Captain Carter is the superhero name.
Yeah.
And what happens is you start perfect, just like the What If comic book started, with Uatu talking about the differences in the multiverse and how one slight change can lead to all kinds of different results. And in this case, the change is in the original, Peggy Carter did not stay inside the lab during the investiture of Steve of his powers. She left the room because she couldn't handle it. In this one, she decided to stay and be moral support for Steve. And then there was a Hydra agent, and he broke in and caused troubles, kind of like in the original. But in the original, they still managed to get Steve into the machine and get him empowered. In this one, Steve is in no shape to go, and they try to get Stark to jump in. He says, "No, I'm a button pusher. I'm not a fighter." And then it's like, "Well, we're going to lose it all." And there's, "No, we're not." And Peggy Carter jumps up and gets there. And the one dude that's in charge is like, "No, women don't fight and stuff. You don't do it. Stark, don't you hit that control." And Stark does anyway.
Yeah.
Because, Stark don't give a shit about the freaking military's outdated things. He's going to do what he can to make his inventions work.
Right?
He's an inventor. He cares more about his inventions than your shit. And
at least getting things done anyway.
right. So then Peggy is now like freaking 7 feet tall and muscular, like a true Amazonian. And Steve Rogers is still the scrawny nerd weakling. And of course, the head of it doesn't want to let her, like, we've wasted it. Women don't fight. Women are agents, not soldiers. And she basically gets to go drink in the pub, and they're working on stuff for her to be in a USO shows as a recruitment gimmick, not anything else, because women, of course, can't be soldiers. But then Tony Stark's dad, Howard Stark, shows up with a costume that he had been working on for the USO show, but he'd modified a little bit to be combat ready and stuff. It's just, she's like, "You got to be kidding me! You don't know much about stealth, do you?" He says, "And that's nothing." And then he tosses down the shield, and her eyes get like these big saucers as the damn shield itself. It's like, ooh, pretty. And they send her in to cause some havoc. And so it starts doing it. And then Steve Rogers mentions his pal Bucky, and his unit has been captured, which is, of course, the Wild Dogs, the ones that were the backup for Steve Rogers.
Howling Commandos,
including Dum Dum Dugan and them. And I couldn't think of the name of the commandos.
Yeah,
but the Howling Commandos, and so they go rescue the Howling Commandos, and out comes this freaking iron suit, looks like a variation on a very rudimentary war machine, and it was made with the Tesseract to give it a power source that it could use, because until the arc reactor core is made by Tony Stark, the Iron Man armor is not possible until he creates that thing in his heart that keeps him alive, and then that powers the original Iron Man suit. And then it's much later that he's able to create like the War Machine for Rhodey. But before that, nothing has been powerful enough to power a suit like that. And the Tesseract is powerful enough. So while they're doing it, then this War Machine shows up, and then it turns out that Steve Rogers is piloting the War Machine. So he's still in the battle.
And they call it, what'd they call it? The Hydra Stomper?
The Hydra Stomper. And the Hydra Stomper kind of becomes like Captain Carter's personal steed to get her into a lot of the combat zones. It would help with some of the fighting, but mostly it was her transportation. But it was nigh on invulnerable. So they lose it at one point in this train against the Red Skull because he breaks in and he finds all this freaking TNT and yells to get everybody else out of the way, but he doesn't get out. And he goes in this avalanche. And I was like, I thought you said that shield was that suit was indestructible. And Tony and Howard Stark's like, it is indestructible, but it's buried under a mountain. You know, it's like, it's not saying that it got destructed, but it's buried under a mountain, man. What do you expect? I can't solve everything. But anyway, after that scene, of course, they were waylaying that train because the Red Skull was using that to steal the Tesseract back. Oh no, he actually got the Tesseract off of the suit, I think. But anyway, they never quite explained whether you get it off the train or off the suit. But we know it was used to power the suit. So
yeah, Red Skull, I think, got it back from the suit because they captured the suit and Steve,
right.
So they got the Tesseract from that, and then put it in the machine to
they make the Thule Society thing going on, because he's basically summoning the Ogden Jahar from Hellboy, which is a Cthulhuan horror. Basically a mound of massive tentacles that keep growing on their own. And it's coming through, and Peg is fighting it and stuff, and the Howling Commanders come across the suit and Steve chained up, and they get Steve into the suit, and they use the generator to give him just a little bit of power so he can use the suit to help Peggy a little bit, but not as much power as the Tesseract could give it, so it's not going to last very long.
Yeah.
And he breaks through the roof and goes to help Peggy, and Peggy ends up, in order to close the rift, physically using her shield to shove the damn Ogden Jahar back through the extra dimensional portal, and she ends up going with it, and they close the portal, and the next thing you know, the portal opens back up, and she comes out with none but pieces of tentacle around her as she's shredded it, and there's freaking Nick Fury there. He says, yeah, the war ended like 80 years ago.
Yeah.
So instead of her being frozen in ice like Steve, she went into an extra dimensional space where time worked differently.
Yeah.
And so that
it reminds me of the monster from the show, the giant tentacled monster.
It's from Hellboy.
But I'm pretty sure
it's almost exactly the Ogden Jahar from Hellboy, because I just recently rewatched Hellboy, and that's of course based on Cthulhu mythos, Lovecraft. So
yeah. I think it's supposed to be the monster that their symbol is based on, the Hydra symbol.
Well, yeah, and their symbol is kind of based on a Hydra from Greek mythology, because that's why they name themselves Hydra. But it's also kind of based on Cthulhu. but they didn't want to, directly rip off Cthulhu and get in trouble with the Lovecraft family.
Yeah.
So they based it on Hydra because Greek mythology is open, not copyrightable because it's considered open historical culture.
Public domain.
Public domain, right. But it really is a Cthulhuian horror.
So what did you think of this show? What did you think of the What If episode?
I like the artwork. I thought it was a good style of animation. This isn't my favorite story. It's not the one I would have started with. I was not the biggest fan of Peggy Carter. Because for one, the TV series I didn't think was that engrossing as compared to some of the other Marvel TV shows. Peggy Carter just was not my favorite character. So, I mean, it was nice seeing the Howling Commandos and Bucky Barnes and Howard Stark and everybody. But I could have done without Agent Carter. It could have been a different one. At least I think to start, they should have gone with one a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
Like, I know one of the ones they're anticipating is what if T'Challa became Star-Lord instead of,
yeah.
And I think...
So for me, for this episode, Carter, I think, was the highlight of it, and I didn't care for the rest.
See, and I'm the opposite, because I didn't like Carter. Carter's, to me, is just
I didn't like the Steve Rogers in this. I didn't care much for Bucky in this.
Howard was good.
I thought the suit that Steve got was kind of dumb. I wasn't too big. I wasn't really feeling this. Like, I found myself getting bored watching it.
They underutilized the Howling Commandos. Like, they had them there. They should have showed a little bit more of, like, Dum Dum Dugan. Because, I mean, in the first Avengers, they managed to actually show some scenes with Dum Dum Dugan. Not a lot, but still, they showed that Dum Dum Dugan was one of his primary lieutenants.
This cartoon is only 33 minutes long.
That's true.
And so they
couldn't
can't show everything. There was some stuff that seemed kind of weird, like Howard Stark just suddenly having a shield to give to Peggy when there is no precedent of her wanting or requesting or needing a shield,
Yeah, right.
Like, Steve chose he wanted a shield.
Yeah,
Howard brought to Peggy, like, look what I got, and slams a shield down that's already painted with the British flag on it.
Well, not to mention that, but the original Captain America's shield from the comic books wasn't the round shield. The round shield was the second generation. First, it was more of a shield like a policeman's badge,
Right.
And then it switched to the round shield and started doing all of the ricochets and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, if you watch the old 90s TV show, they went directly to the round shield too. But they made it out of fucking plexiglass.
For this movie, I mean, for the MCU, they paid homage to the old school shield by him having it in those UFO sessions or whatever.
Yeah,
that's UFO isn't right, but
USO.
USO.
Yeah.
USO. That's what I meant to say. The USO things. He had those little shield there. But it was Steve. Like, Steve first used the car door as a shield.
Right.
And within the context of the story, him ripping that car door off and using it as a shield was the initial inspiration for him having a shield. And when he was being asked about picking out a weapon, he's like, a shield is pretty useful, right? There was nothing to that regard in this cartoon. There was no precedent for why to give her a shield. She had no experience in using shields.
No, in this case, it was Howard's idea alone.
Yeah.
It was unilateral.
He gives her a pre-painted shield, and then after she uses it for the first time, she's like, talks to the Shield like, "Where have you been my whole life?"
Right.
I was like, "What?"
So Diamond's our
And
girl's
so,
best friend. A Shield is.
yeah, I feel like that could have been fixed easily with like a little 15 seconds of her using a shield for some other purpose.
Ripping a car door
picking
off,
up,
just like Steve did.
yeah.
You
She had
know.
done exactly the same thing.
I mean, because
But
she was
she never
tipping over
did anything
tanks
like
and throwing motorbikes around. She could have easily picked up something and used it to block something else and said, what might be useful here? A shield.
that. Yeah. And, like, I know it was a cartoon, but that said, her smoothness at taking out some walls of soldiers felt cartoonish. Like, it felt like she could kick once and, like, 5 guys would go flying up against the wall.
Right.
That's, 20 feet away. And I was like, I don't know.
It was a little bit over the top.
And yeah, it was a little over the top for a captain, for the super soldier serum.
Right.
And so, between that and then basically the precursor of the Iron Man suit that Steve was piloting, and
it's a little bit more than a tin can that flies. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I think a highlight to it was that little nod to Winter Soldier where Bucky falls off the train and Captain Carter successfully catches him and pulls him up on the train. Catches him, and he's like, "Careful there, Captain! You almost ripped off my arm."
Right.
Like that got a smile for me, but overall, I don't know. I like Carter herself.
The part they brought with Steve Rogers, even though I kind of liked it, if they'd have left that Steve Rogers part out, didn't build the suit for him, then it would have left it open for her to have Dum Dum Dugan as more of an obvious lieutenant, like he was in the Captain America movies.
Yeah.
Because she didn't have a metal man to help her. He had the Howling Commandos. If she'd have had the same situation, they could have at least emphasized Dum Dum Dugan a little bit more, or Bucky a little bit more.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I think they Steve Rogers would have been better used if, yeah.
As a first story, this would have been like a second or third story. But to introduce the series, I think they should have picked one that would have not been so divisive. Because there's going to be the people like me that are really into everybody but Carter, and people like you are really into Carter but not the rest of the story. And then there's going to be people that's rolling their eyes at the whole thing. Where I think T'Challa as Star-Lord would have been a good story to start with. Now, I don't want him to dive into one of the best stories right off the bat. So, I don't want him to do like Marvel Zombies right off the bat. I want to build up to Marvel Zombies. I think that deserves a build up. And alternate Sorcerer Supremes, give it a little bit of time. Because most of the other TV series that we've come out have all been touching on the mystical arts. So let's try to not make Marvel all about the mystical. So let's wait a little bit before we do the couple of Doctor Strange episodes. I mean, there's a lot of episodes planned for What If. And they've got a lot of material because that was a long-running comic strip. Yeah. And there's all kinds more they can add of What If situations, and especially now that they have the multiverse. So there were different stories they could have chose from that might have worked better. I mean, obviously they were not going to choose a Spider-Man story right off the bat because they always have to negotiate everything Spider-Man with Sony.
I'm pretty sure, I think I saw a clip of Spider-Man as the Sorcerer Supreme in one of the teasers.
Yeah, they're probably going to do some, but I wouldn't think they would do a Spider-Man right off the bat because they still might have to do some talking with Sony about it.
Well, I heard that they're also planning on these versions of these characters, potentially appearing in other parts of the MCU. Because these What If stories are supposed to be, apparently, Yeah, they're part of the multiverse.
Well,
So
like the first appearance of like Spider Gwen was in a What If comic,
yeah,
and so Spider Gwen would normally have been like a suggestion for me, or another one that was a big one from the Spider-Man universe is what if Captain Jameson, J. Jonah's son, had gotten the Spider-Man powers?
hmm.
Was one of the original What If comic books, and it was one of the earliest stories, which would have made sense to be one of the beginners.
Yeah,
Or there's a few other ones. What if Spider-Man had joined the Fantastic Four? Um,
yeah.
what if
Anyway, I'm ready to move on to the next show.
yeah, those
Yeah,
what if Rick Jones had been the one that had gotten the Hulk powers instead of uh, Bruce Banner? So
yeah,
things like that were all possibilities. Okay, our next and final offering for the week. We're over in time by 36 minutes already because we do that all the
yeah.
freaking time. But our next offering is James Gunn's seminal film, The Suicide Squad. Okay, this dropped Thursday. Now I misspoke last week, so some people were expecting. I was expecting it to drop at no later than 2 a.m. But it actually didn't end up dropping until 6 p.m. because of its early premiere status.
Yeah,
So it dropped actually at 7 p.m. Eastern time, which would have been 6 p.m. our time.
yeah.
So I was a little disappointed I couldn't watch it earlier, but that's okay because that meant I could hold off and watch it with Alice, and there was an excuse not to watch it right away for me. Although I'd have probably just watched it twice, and I have watched it twice already. uh, but okay, my first major analysis of the movie is it gets the action going right off the fucking bat. There ain't no preamble. There ain't no build up. It's a we're on now kind of thing.
Yeah,
And then they do some flashbacky stuff. But they started right in the depth of things. Now, my major critique of this is that some of the characters that we've been looking forward to so much were killed off so early they didn't get much playtime. You know, TDK, Nathan Fillion, had one big scene. That was it. What's his name?
yeah.
Davidson, who played what's call it, didn't really have a chance to do anything
What was his
except
name?
freak
Black Knight, Blackguard,
Blackguard or something.
something.
But he did
Yeah.
nothing. And then yet they'd made a big deal about how supposedly him and Weasel had like this enmity. The only enmity they had is when freaking Harley Quinn said, "Is he a werewolf?" And he's like, "Am I sitting next to a fucking werewolf?" That was it.
Yeah.
That was his whole scene. And the same thing with Weasel. Weasel just sat there and just like, and then drowned. Only to not drown at the very end of the movie. Uh,
Did anybody
Javelin.
bother to check if Weasel could swim?
Yeah, right?
Oh,
Javelin had no real use of his skills as a Olympic level javelin thrower. His javelin just basically went to Harley Quinn and he died. You know, as far
yeah.
as we were
He
concerned
got
at
a few.
the beginning of the movie, we thought everybody was gone. Savant turned tail and fucking ran.
Yeah.
So Michael Rooker was like, you know what? Screw this noise. And he panicked and ran, even though the explosive device in his head was going to go off. And you got Amanda Waller saying, "I'm serious. I'm going to do it. I'm going to."
Right.
And then they did kind of go a little hokey with making the different words in the blood and the words in the trees and the words in every scene was kind of a little hokey too. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. They took all those great characters that you wanted to see more of and got rid of them right off the bat. Now, they did end up, because there would have been a major uprising if they had not, they did keep Harley alive, and they did keep Rick Flag alive. But Harley being alive was the most important one because, like the first movie, I think in the second movie, uh, Margot Robbie stole the movie again. She is the star of this movie, just like she was the star of the last movie.
Not as drastically as the first
Yeah,
one,
she
but
didn't. She
still.
didn't eclipse Idris Elba as much as she eclipsed Will Smith.
Yeah.
But she still was more of a focal character than anybody expected her to be. You know, they expected to be a little
Yeah.
bit more balanced between her and Idris Elba and Rick Flag and John Cena.
That's
But
something I do appreciate. I do. So while while there is a little bit of disappointment and all those people dying so quickly at the beginning of the movie, I do feel like that turned out to be a much better use of the characters and how, like,
well, yeah,
remember
because
the
it would have
first
been hard
Suicide
to.
Squad movie? They introduced in the first Suicide Squad movie.
They
Which
introduced.
Suicide Squad members died except for Slipknot? Like, Slipknot got his head blown off at the beginning of the movie to showcase, hey, this is legit.
You
These
could
explosives
die,
in their necks are going to kill them. But
right?
I don't
Nobody else
think
died.
anyone else died until the fire guy maybe at the end.
Yeah, and we're not even sure
Fire
if
guy,
Diablo's dead or not
yeah.
because he's a
Diablo
living
may or may
embodiment
not
of
have sacrificed
fire.
himself.
But he's a living
Yeah,
embodiment of fire, so he still might not be dead.
yeah.
He might just
So
actually have to recoalesce.
there wasn't much dying in the Suicide Squad from the Suicide Squad themselves in the previous movie.
For a name
And
like
in the
Suicide
previous
Squad,
movie,
you'd expect him to die more.
yeah. And the only characters that had any development, like Diablo showed up. Diablo had like 3 scenes where he had something happening. They were powerful moments, but they were outside of that. He was kind of just quietly in the background most of the film. And then the alligator guy, Killer Croc.
Killer Croc.
He was pretty much silent except for Killer Croc was pretty silent throughout almost the whole movie.
Except I live in the water, and that's about it. Yeah.
You basically forget that Killer Croc is even there until they need him. Like,
yeah. And Margot Robbie,
and the one time he's needed.
Yeah. And
whereas
really,
this movie,
Deadshot,
this new one, Deadshot,
he didn't really use
Harley,
his Deadshot
and
abilities
Boomerang
much.
were the 3.
In the very beginning of the movie, he used his Deadshot ability with that one assassination. And then when they put him on that pistol range and he showed a few shots, after that, his fantastic aim didn't really come into play much. You know?
I don't know about that. I mean, he
hit that one thing in the midair, but they didn't really showcase the fact that he was Deadshot, the guy that never misses.
Right, but they showcased how good of a fighter he was. Like, there's that scene where he jumped up on the car and was like successfully shooting. Every bullet was taking out one of those monsters.
Right.
And everyone else was stunned at how good he was at killing all these creatures.
But it wasn't really showcasing the fact that he was the man that never missed. It was just a plethora of targets. With that many targets, it's hard to miss. And the other thing was, just like him, Captain Boomerang, for all that you didn't really have much of a presence in the first movie, even he was there. He never really threw a boomerang once that you really noticed. I think he might have done one, but it wasn't really even noticeable. At least in this movie, he did one good boomerang shot.
Yeah.
Before he died.
He had like glowing boomerangs, I think, and he did like some kind of a boomerang camera, which was weird.
Right.
But yeah, he died pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But what I was getting at is, besides the ones who died in the opening scene of the movie, which was like, what, 7 characters?
Well, you lost.
And I think that's something else.
Javelin, TDK, Savant, and technically Weasel, but technically not Weasel.
Yeah.
And then you thought you. Oh, and then you also lost Blackguard. So
Yeah,
5.
got shot in the face.
7 if you think
I
that
think I
Margot
counted.
Robbie and Flag both died, though it turned out they didn't.
Yeah.
Um,
I think I remember going back and checking, and that like at the beginning of the movie there was I think 14 Suicide Squad people, and by the end there's 4 members left of the squad.
yeah.
By the end of the movie.
Yeah,
And
you
then
actually
one ends
even
up.
end up caring for Polka Dot Man.
Yeah, Polka Dot Man was surprisingly pretty great.
This is.
And this is
You
what I
know
was
who
getting at
that
is
is?
besides.
That's your mom.
Yeah. Besides the opening scene where, or besides the ones that died at the beginning of the movie, the ones that did have more in the movie, you got to know them and care about them far more than any of the characters that weren't Harley or Deadshot in the first movie.
Right.
The big shark, King Shark.
King Shark.
You know, King Shark basically replaced Killer Croc. But you know what the difference was between Killer Croc and King Shark? King Shark had personality. He had a fair number of lines, even if he wasn't being smart about it.
Oh, he was great. He was just a stupid great.
Yeah.
He was stupid great.
He was one of the highlights of the film. Yeah.
Hand. Yes, that is your hand.
I like when he tries to eat
Get off the com.
Like one of my favorite parts is when Ratcatcher is asleep and King Shark picks her up and is like has her lifted in the air and has her head inside his mouth when Bloodsport spots it and yells at him. And and then when after Ratcatcher wakes up, she's sleeping through all this. But then when she gets woken up, he's like, "How fucking deep of a sleeper are you?"
And then she ends up being his friend,
like,
best friend.
Why are you trying to eat your teammate? Yes. Why are you trying to eat your team? I'm hungry. But then that was really sweet.
Then you'd eat your friends. He says, "I no have friends."
Yeah.
He says, "I'll be your friend."
Oh man.
You friend?
And
then we're disguised. What? Fake mustache.
King Shark puts his finger on his lip. He's like, "Fake mustache."
That's the worst fake mustache I've ever seen. Damn it! And it's like, Bird.
Oh man.
Get off the comms. But then he points up at Starro. That nom nom. Nom nom?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they're walking at the end with all the dead bodies around us. Says, nom nom? No, that's not nom nom. But that nom nom. He's a freaking hyena. He's a scavenger. He'll eat anything that's left around for him to eat.
Pretty much literally.
If they hadn't been careful, he'd eat Polka Dot's body.
So yeah, these characters had personality. They got to have some development.
James Gunn knows how to use misfits.
Yeah, he knows how to use misfits. He knows how to
extract a lot out of them.
Yeah, he knows how to extract a lot out of a team. You know.
Now, one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie is when they went to rescue Rick Flag and destroyed all the insurgents, and turned out that they were the good guys.
Yeah.
It's like, these are the Corto Maltese freedom fighters. Why didn't none of my men make an alarm? Is it men? What men? I didn't find. I turned them all into my mother and killed them. And then, and out comes a piece of one of them's like weaponry out of King Shark. No,
Yeah.
mom.
Uh, Peacemaker is like the definition of like America's military strategy.
He's like
I'll do
freaking.
any.
Um,
I'll do
uh,
anything for peace. I'll
it's
kill
like
every man, woman, and child it takes to
it's like
maintain the peace.
that Team America. America, fuck yeah,
Yeah,
fighting rights to save the
yeah,
motherfucking day. He's totally that. Because I mean, he's like,
yeah.
I'm hit exactly what I aim for. I hit it. I hit it more in the center. What? How do you mean
Oh
more?
yeah,
I use smaller bullets. And then later, freaking, he kills him with a smaller bullet because he
yeah.
just breaks through his bullet and kills him. It's like, but he's not dead because at the very end, in that freaking last end of the credit scene, they come back and they look at each other and says, we're being done this as a punishment for not backing Waller, right? I know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, um, I was surprised
It's a
how
phenomenal
many.
movie. I
Yeah,
definitely recommend it, if even for the people that were not looking forward to it because they did not like the first movie. You got to realize, except for the fact that it had Margot Robbie, Boomerang, and Amanda Waller and Flag from the first movie, those are really the only similarities because James Gunn did this one, and James Gunn knows how to use characters. He may
now
have
also,
and now the other thing that you got to keep in mind though is some of the characters that died in the beginning still may not be permanently dead, like TDK, because if you can disconnect your own parts of your body, you're not necessarily as susceptible to permanent damage like gunshot wounds.
maybe not.
So you never know if somebody like TDK might come back.
True.
There's always a
Now,
chance.
something I gotta mention about how to like comparing this to the other movie and the creation of it. David Ayer made the first movie,
Right.
and my understanding is that his original cut of the movie was quite different than what eventually came out to the public because the Warner Brothers executives, came in
Oh
and
yeah, they came and
messed with
slashed
it
it
a
to
lot.
shit.
Yeah,
Well, like they took most of Jared Leto's good scenes out, which
yeah,
pissed Jared Leto the fuck off, and I don't blame him. He went
yeah,
from supposedly having some great scenes in the movie to barely having like 5 minutes of actual screen time, so nobody had a chance to get to know his Joker.
yeah.
And there's a lot of people
Whereas,
that wanted to know more about his Joker.
whereas um, this movie with James Gunn, I'm told that Warner Brothers basically said, "Do whatever you want with it," and they were hands off and let him make the movie he wanted to make.
Well, part of that was because he had just gotten kicked off of the Disney franchise. And Warner Brothers is like, look, the only way we're going to keep this guy is if we do the exact opposite of what Disney did and give him carte blanche.
Yeah,
And so let's give him carte blanche and tell him, look, you be as raunchy, as nasty, as whatever you want. We don't have that Disney reputation to worry about. You're Warner Brothers now. We can be R-rated if we want. We can do all kinds of things that Marvel won't necessarily do. Have at it. And we will get out of your way. And James Gunn is such a proven writer director that he did. He took the ball and ran with it.
yeah,
Because he's James fucking Gunn
yeah,
and stuff. Now, like I said, when Suicide Squad 3 comes out, when the third installment, whatever it ends up being called, comes out, if it ever does, there'll be another mix of characters. Um, Obviously, Rick Flag will be gone unless it's a prequel, because they can always do something from before this group. Like when they first
yeah,
recruit TDK, they might have him with a different team, which is why none of this team knew what he can do. But then that would kind of preclude Margot Robbie, and that's the thing, is she's such a linchpin character. It's kind of hard. Now, the next thing we're going to see in this Ballywick is going to be the John Cena Peacekeeper TV series on
Yeah.
Disney Plus. And so, depending on how that series goes, is probably where we're going to learn more. Also,